Please tell me all the bad, never good. Fill my head full of every single doubt, yeah. Please say any negative thoughts. I pop off when I hear people say I cannot. I get off to the thought of proving everyone wrong. I won't stop to the top, so you better back off and get lost. I'ma stay loud, stay proud, never running out, never heading south. I'll be spreading out, call it word of mouth. Can't put me down, I'll be getting loud. You can have your doubts, not what I'm about. Have your fucking cloud, it be raining now. I keep making sound, go another round. Bitch, I'm legend bound, can't stop me now. You don't wanna fuck with me. A slow burn like a disease. Just tell me that I can and I'll show you things that you couldn't believe. Just tell me that I can. Just tell me that I can. Just tell me that I can. Just tell me that I can.
Yeah, just tell me that I can't. Come on now, everyone. What's going on, everyone? How are you all doing today? I'm doing pretty good. Just had to wrangle the doggies outside. Yeah, BTC ETF stuff. We're just hanging out here just a little bit until the hearing happens. So, I mean, we got some time to talk to each other and do what we gotta do. So, yeah, let's have some fun. Let's wait for people to get on. I started early today. I know, overachiever. Okay, real quick. How's everyone liking the sound? Let's do a sound check. Come on, anyone who's watching right now, let me know. Is the sound legit? Is the sound? Oh, I can get puppies. Oh yeah, we can. Trust me, we could get puppies. Don't you worry about that. We can definitely get puppies in on this action. In fact, how about we do that? How about we get one of the puppies? I will be right back, and let's see who wants to hang out with us today. Come here, Leia. There you go. All right, come on. All right, go up on your shed, sweetie. Come on, get up there. Good girl. Good job, sweetheart. All right, we have Leia joining us today, and there are calls out there to make the sound a little bit louder. There you go. I just upped the mic sound a little bit more, and let me bring the mic actually a little closer, right? Bring it a little closer. Yeah, but Leia's hanging out with us today. So, all right, we've got the hearing as well that we're going to be talking about. Turn it up a bit. I did just turn it up. Let me know if I need to turn it up just a little bit more. I don't want to go too crazy on the mic. I do got a little bit of feedback, so I could kind of hear y'all, you know. But yeah, let me know. I can keep adjusting the sound. The main thing is are you able to hear me clearly? Maybe, you know, let me know. But right now we're sitting at Bitcoin at 46,533, ETH 2436, XRP at 57.2, XLM rocking it in right now at 11.6. What are y'all thinking? I mean, come on now. What are y'all thinking? Dreamin' Force is giving us the thumbs up. Sniff is in the house as Klaus. My Omniflex Centro is 0.04. Was Chad AF now? Because it's 0.26. Way to go. MPPDD says sound is a go. Not only do we have sound, we've got Doggy in the background. Right, Leia? Yeah, sweetheart. See, you have fans too, sweetie. Yeah. Yeah, Leia's my good girl. She's the one that I actually take with me when we do all the mountain climbing and hiking like that. So she is great. Can tell you have been burning calories. I've been doing pretty good. I can't run physically well yet. I'm still in a lot of pain. My nerves have not come back yet. So I'm struggling a little bit with the nerve pain in my knee. And a little bit of nerve pain in the bone, like around the bones down my leg. But other than that, the rest of me is 100%. I am 100% good to go. Like, my hips feel great. My feet are good. Like, everything feels good. It's just my knee and my shin in my left leg is still giving me some nerve problems. So, but yeah, I've definitely been burning the calories just because I can't run as much now. I'm lifting a lot more, and I'm doing a lot more physical therapy exercises, which really, like, sucks, but I know it's good for you. Oh, the Rev is in the house. What's up, Rev? What's up with you, kind sir? Spoiled like my dogs. Yeah, Leia is definitely spoiled. But the big news that we're talking about right now is BTC ETF action, right? I mean, we're all like, okay, cool. Are we going to moon a little bit? part of us are sitting there going, okay, well, wait a minute. Are they not going to be approving it now? Like, do they have to, like, delay it just so they can be like, look, we need to get a freaking lid on this because this is an absolute disaster and an absolute mess. So, yeah, we're gonna be seeing what's going on. Deep tissue massage. Yeah, I do. I've got massage guns. I've got TENS units. I do lots of stretching. I do lots of mobility work. I would say I at least do, God. Ooh, now if I say this out loud, y'all are going to be like, dude, you are messed up. I do a minimum of like an hour of stretching and mobility work a day. Like that's at a minimum. That's like that's a minimum if I like try to sleep in bed and like just chill out for the day. Yeah, I do lots and lots of mobility work. Massage gun is great. The thing is I'm trying to do this as much as I can, like without like ruining myself, but no, I just need a few weeks. I did an ultra marathon 9 days ago, I think it was. Yeah, like 9-10 days ago I did an ultra marathon, so my body's still recovering from that, and I did it while having the flu, which made it even flipping worse. So a little ketamine will do wonders, dude. There's a lot of things. Sister salvia can sometimes do amazing things. Juicy things that rhyme with activity and song, but instead of activity put gravity, and then instead of song put something that starts with a B. Okay, cool. Not basong. You have to get rid of the S. Just throwing it out there. Yeah, so it's just I'm still trying to repair, still trying to get back to things. The market, absolute fucking mess. You know, you've got Jack the Rippler, who might as well be known as Jack Mehoff the Rippler, saying tokenization of XRP ledgers coming soon. Trillions will flow into XRP, $100 just the beginning. You're fucking stupid. You're fucking stupid. And you're stupid because Stellar has got tons and tons of tokenization. Tons of it. Who is Franklin Templeton did a whole bunch with them. Didn't do shit for the price. Tokenization does not do shit for the price. Tokenization is just another thing that people are trying to sell you on that makes shit move. Tokenization doesn't do jack shit. So Jack the Rippler, jack shit. That's how we do it. That's how we did it. Sniff says, I'm so glad I switched to wax from flour. Wax lasts way longer. Yeah, but like you can do, your wax rips on your rigs and stuff like that. And you can get couch locked and we get all that. But you just got to make sure whatever you pick isn't like going to make you eat a ton, especially if you want to be in ultra marathon shape. Just saying. Just throwing it out there. MPP DD says, what am up with that dude? Yeah, Jack the Rippler is a joke. The hearing today, I'm going to be honest with you. I think the hearing is going to be a big nothing burger joke. Swear to God. I think today you're going to have a bunch of people just taking this as an opportunity to grandstand and people taking an opportunity to rip on each other, not work together, making this shit, like, work. It's not a negative stance on it, but you got to think, okay? If you're not in the United States, this will kind of make more sense to you. We're in an election year. We're in an election cycle. This is a really, really crazy, shitty, serious one. Like it's not a good year, okay? People are not working together. They just want to get themselves voted so they can make more money. So, like, hearings like this, they're just grandstanding events for these people just to fucking jerk around. And sorry for the language, but it's true. They're just here to jerk around with everyone. And they're just working on making sure that they get reelected, the ones that are. So they want to make themselves look good, especially the people in the House. Let's just be real about that. MPP DD says, I agree on the nothing burger. Yeah, total nothing burger. This one just sucks. Mep says, I'm only taking CBD THC oil. A lot of people are down with that kind of stuff for recovery. There's quite a few people I know in the sports world that rely a lot on cannabis for recovery methods, and that surprises a lot of people, but it really helps them with their shutdown. As you get like higher up into sport and as you start like really just abusing the crap out of your body, it looks like this. For whatever you do for your sport, you do like 50% more strength conditioning, like mobility work, PT work, pre-therapy work, stuff like that. So if you ratchet up like where you want to go, like if you want to ratchet up your miles, you want to ratchet up your power, you want to ratchet up your strength, whatever you ratchet up, you have to build support way more. And a lot of people, to get that recovery, they actually lean on that. So it's really, really interesting stuff. Robert Melvin says, dude, it sucks. Feel better. It's just, it's just my left knee in my shin. It's just nerves. I get firing nerve pain in my leg. It's really weird ever since the race. And a couple days before the race, my knee started locking up on me a little bit, and my joints started to dry out. I think it was because I was getting sick. And yeah, it just made it really rough. I can do like a lot. I can actually lift. I can do a ton of things. I can do lunges. I can do all sorts of stuff. I did elliptical yesterday for like 40 minutes. And I can do all that, zero pain. I take one running step. It is just pins and needles, man. It is crazy. It is crazy. Yeah, good shoes are very important. Hold on, Andrew. I got your back, bud. Hold on. I'm glad you said that. Good shoes are actually super important because I actually do. See? I tons and tons of different shoes. These are just the ones I have in the studio right now. Yeah, so no, huge thing with the good shoes. You got to use good shoes. I swapped my shoes actually 2 different times when I ran the ultra marathon. It was really good for my feet. That sounds like a buildup of lactic acid. It is. I have lactic acid and inflammation, so I'm still trying to spin my legs out. And I'm doing a lot of TENS work on my leg, and the muscles themselves aren't letting up yet. And it all stems from my hip. But yeah, that's the thing. Mep is saying the XLM ETH is depressing. Yeah, you know, when you look at the market, okay, and when you start zooming out, you start looking at it, and you're like, dude, there are some players out there that are hitting big, and some that aren't. And what really is starting to bug people is you're starting to see other things out there. Even though Sol has pulled back a lot, it's still up 31% in the last month. BNB, which, come on now, has been slammed regulatory-wise, you know what I mean? BNB is still up 23%. What about Optimism? 72%. And so that's where people are starting to get pissed. They're starting to get pissed because they're starting to see more winners pop up out there. ICP, come on now, 129%. I mean, that is crazy. Yes, sleep is definitely crucial. I am prioritizing sleep right now. I'm getting like 8-9 hours of sleep a day. Like, legit. I'm napping on the couch. Yeah, like, seriously, like, dude, old man naps is fucking awesome. If you ever want to justify in your life eating candy, taking naps, running like super slow because like you're doing it over long distances, and like trying all sorts of like cool drinks and shit like that, and like having people pamper you, dude, just do ultra marathons. Straight up. Like, I get to like eat candy like jelly beans, and I try all these different types of like candy so I know what I could use for fuel when I do my long runs. And like I'm justifying candy. And then like I gotta take a nap, so I tell my wife, I'm like, dude, hey, today's a recovery day. In my training schedule, I have to take a nap. And my wife is like, oh, well, if it's in your training schedule, I mean, like, that makes sense. And then guess what? A nap is in my training schedule the next day, too. And then like, the next day after that, too. Check it out. Hold on, I gotta show you something. Look at it. The blue chunks in here, those are naps. The blue chunks, like, midday right there, those are naps, okay? And yep, there's another. Okay, we're getting there. See, naps. I'm telling you, man, you guys got to get into ultra marathons. Jimbo Tango in the house, OG viewer, saying, "What's up, Klaus? What's up with you, Jimbo? How are you doing, my good man? We're just talking winners and losers in the market. Wigbuster hanging out with us as well. What's up, Paul? How are you? Oh my, there are some juicy comments going up on the screen. Sniff is in the house. A deep red that, in my opinion, is a good entry. Is Bitsong BTSG. Well, thank you, Sniff. And everyone, give Sniff a big thank you for supporting the channel. That is how we do it here. Any support for the channel, we all thank him. Brad, not overtraining. Brad, I'm going to call you out, bro. You see, Brad thinks that I'm overtraining. Now, mind you, I am very, like, meticulous with my, I don't know how to put this. I'm very meticulous with how I monitor my body. So I'm going to show you something very cool. Here. This is my 4-week taper load. That is not overtraining. That is me tapering like a good boy. In fact, that's the ultra marathon right there. I tapered all the way to the bottom and then popped it on up. So no, it is not overtraining. That is what happens when you run an ultra marathon while having the flu. That is not smart. Don't do what I do. That's bad stuff. That is bad stuff. Robert Melvin says, just hanging in the club. We're hanging out at the club. VR Chat Fanatic says, in Klaus we trust. You don't want me for president because you don't want me telling the truth. Because the truth is, a lot of things suck some massive balls. That's the deal, man. That's totally the deal. Injuries are from overtraining. No. You see, that's not the deal. The injury came from me not stretching out my hip properly, which then changed my gait, which put more strain on my groin, which put more strain on the inside of my knee. Now I had a fever on top of that, which dried out my joints. Even though I was trying my best to stay hydrated, I was throwing up, I was sick, and other nasty things. And then I did the ultra marathon on top of it, and then I got second place. So it was not from overtraining, it was from me pushing it, even though I shouldn't on race day. But we're winners, not losers in this channel. Yeah, and Mitch says, I love a power nap after training to help with recovery and growth. Dude, seriously, that is the best. Seriously, yeah. The naps, you get like a really good bump in regeneration. As long as the nap isn't so long to where it messes you up and you can't sleep at night. You just got to make sure that, you know what I mean? Like, and yeah, a lot of cool people. Do I cycle? I do not cycle like bike cycle. Yes. I've got actually a carbon road bike right back there, and I've got my other racing road bike right back there as well. So yes, I do. Ben's in the house says, "Sup, Klaus? Hope you're good. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Ben. Everyone, give Ben big thank you for the support as well. Ben hanging out with us, long time OG, like OG. Like if there was like an OG of OGs, that would be Ben as a viewer on the channel. And we're talking about like I'm talking about live stream, like when we had maybe 500 total subs. Like I mean, like really, really, really long time ago. So thank you, Ben, for the support. I appreciate it. Today, right, we've got the hearing. I'm just telling everyone what's going on. All right, we've got the hearing today. Nothing burger. Let's be real here. Nothing burger. Okay, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. I'm not gonna sell you on views. If you think you're here to see some like big like crypto regulation shit, no. We're here to hang out on the chat, listen to these morons act like how they're cool and they know what's going on. Nothing fun. The fun is going to be hanging out with chat. Just throwing it on there. Just throwing it out there. But yeah, big thing today is ETF action. I mean, let's be real here. Gary Gensler, all right? Two-factor authentication. Are you serious? You cannot make that stuff up, man. Like you cannot make that stuff up. The SEC did not enable two-factor authorization. I mean, come on now. FedEx, one of the old ones as well. Very true. Good point, FedEx. The Rev has been hanging out with us. Jimbo Tango's been hanging out with us. We have a lot of OG viewers here. We really do. And that's where like this channel has gotten better. It's gotten better and better because honestly, a lot of you guys and gals are suggesting things to make the channel better, and it really, really, really works. Like that's just legit. But no, we find out that the SEC, okay, the SEC did not have two-factor authentication set up, and someone posted something that wasn't supposed to, and then like they got in trouble for it, and yeah, big mess, big mess. Now, some of you out there, I don't know if you've seen this, all right? Ooh, Northeast Whitewater says, I just got my first carbon bike. Oh, I love it. Yes. Okay, so I've got, and I can see it right behind me here. I've got a Trek domain. It's a 4.7 carbon fork, carbon handlebars, carbon post. I did get ultralight wheels because you can't do carbon by where I live. I mean, like you could, but like there's some really, really crappy road sections, and I am not about to crack carbon wheels. I've already jacked up one rear wheel already, like this last year. Yeah, not cool. So, oh man, carbon bike talk. I love it. You guys are just freaking awesome. Freaking awesome. Conspiracy, I think it gets passed. They wanted to see how the market would react. You know, NV, I was thinking about that too, because I was just like, you know, what's going to happen with this whole ETF, right? I mean, like, is the market going to react positive or negative? And essentially, I'm sitting here going, was this a dry run of the information? Like, did they dry run this out and be like, let's see how the market is going to react? Messed up. I mean, look, the government websites information are supposed to be trusted sources of information, the most secure. Because think about this, erase the whole idea, okay? Erase the whole idea that this was the SEC's website. What if this was the Department of Homeland Security's Twitter thing, and they posted something like, an attack was imminent, seek shelter now? People are going to see that and go, holy crap, what is going on? And then there's going to be panic, right? Orson Welles, War of the Worlds. Anyone out there hanging out knowing little Orson Welles action? Okay, cool. All right, now here's the deal. Think of that impact. Now, this impact here was more financial. There were people that made decisions on this financially. There were, and they got wrecked on it. Plain and simple, they got wrecked. And they got wrecked from an official government account post. And okay, what if your local sheriff put out a post and your local sheriff was like, go inside, we have mass murderers that have escaped from the prison just wrecking everyone? Dude, people are going to freak out because they're going to look at, they're going to think it's trusted, it's a government source, and they act on it. Like, this is bigger than the SEC. This is a government agency getting compromised at a time that a lot of eyeballs are going to be on it, okay? A lot of eyeballs are going to be on that page because everyone's looking for the whole thing. And yeah, look what happens. You get that news. That's where this is so damaging, because like, it's not just the SEC. The entire government is a fucking joke. Like, the entire government process is a joke. Today, if this hearing sucks ass, I might just say fuck the hearing and go back on the mic and cam and hang out with y'all. Like, if this is a big stroke fest and not worth your time or mine, I could always sit here and just be a piece of shit and just let the stream run and just garnish views over watching some stupid boobs talk. But like, for real, if this is a waste of our time, I'll ask y'all in chat and be like, look, chat, how do you feel? Maybe I'll post a poll or some shit. Because I'm telling you, the government's a fucking joke. The SEC gets hacked when all eyes are on it. Now, you sit here and you go, well, Jesus Christ, any fucking news that comes out, can we even believe this? Like, can we even believe stuff that's posted? Or do you have to wait now for an authorization from another government entity to say, yes, we do approve of that message? It's just an absolute disaster of a shit mess. And it's crypto. This SEC thing that happened is about, you know what? The government ain't in charge. All right? When the Rona happened, we got a couple minutes here. Got a couple minutes, like 3. When the Rona happened, okay, what happened? Streetcar takeovers happened. They shut down streets. We were street racing. We were doing all sorts of stupid shit. Spraying the nitrous on the Mustang. Yeah. Full forged. There was no one out there. People started blocking highways. People started like rioting and burning stuff and all this kind of stuff. And it's like the government couldn't do anything about it. The government couldn't even protect their own Twitter account. And we rely upon getting truthful information from these Twitter accounts because that's one of the fastest ways to get information out there. And now we can't even trust it. The government is not in control. They want you to think they're in control. They're not. Plain and simple, they are not. The government is a joke. Sniff is right. I think we all know the government is a joke. We can't call them out without being censored. Well, I'm doing it because this is a fucking joke. Andrew Garcia says, T-Mobile is listening. Social credit score is coming. Well, social credit can suck my balls too because I pay in cash. So, ask me if I give a shit. Go into the mountains. Go fuck yourself. I mean, this is, seriously, imagine if the National Weather Service Twitter account is hacked. while a lot of eyes are on it, because maybe there's storms brewing on the East Coast. Maybe it's hurricane season. I live in South Carolina. Y'all know that I've been hit with some storms. You know, got to worry about the boat on the shore. I got to check on that. Oh, shit. You know, and that's the deal. And what if the National Weather Service comes out? Huge typhoon fucking warning. Everyone, you know, go inside, massive typhoon, 20-foot waves. People are going to freak the out. And then we find out it's a hacked hoax? Come on. Come on. And that's what happened to the SEC. This is stupid. This is stupider than crap. Brad says cash will be gone. No, cash will not be gone. You know why? Cash is the ultimate way to get around the government. And if you and I want to do business with each other, I have something that you want, and you've got cash. Well, guess what? You and I are going to make a trade. And if you and I aren't going to make a trade, guess what's going to happen? I just dropped my watch. Guess what's going to happen? I'm going to find someone else that wants to deal with cash and wants to trade with me. Or I'm going to be like, oh, dude, you've got a whole bunch of moonshine over there. Hey, guess what? I have a crispy $100 bill. And dude's going to be like, done. Because we're going to work with that. Cash will not be gone. The people that think cash is going to be gone, fail. Do not ever give cash up. Cash is one of the best things that you can do to protect yourself from the government. Seriously, whatever you guys do out there, fight, fight, fight. Do not ever give up your right to cash. Do not do that. Cash is king for a reason, because you can't trace this shit. Even PayPal now, the government's like, yeah, you know, we want to make sure that we track, you know, your PayPal transactions over so much. What are we getting for it? I did a rant a few days ago. And it was basically me saying, you know what? Stellar Development Foundation dumped 2.3 billion lumens on the market, right? And what'd you get for it? Right? You didn't get much. Don't lie to me and tell me the price is good, because I'm going to be like, seriously, you don't know what the good is. Good is not 11.6 cents. But now what about the government? How many billions and billions and billions and billions and billions are we spending on the government with just shit results? This is where you get frustrated. MEP says cash is the only way to transact without being tracked. You bet your butt. I bet you, if I was to go to my local bodega and they were selling pizzas by the slice, and I'm like, hey, homeboy, if I give you a $5 bill, can I get 2 pieces instead of 1? And he's going to look at me and go, I don't have to bring that through the register. I can put it in my pocket. Here you go, Klaus. Here's 2 pieces of pizza for $5. Cash. Cash is king. Droba says, is there a time it's supposed to be announced? There's no time for the ETF to be announced. This hearing, though, was supposed to be happening 1 minute and 37 seconds ago, so they're not, like, you know. Oh, yeah, Cresso says 20 to 30% cheaper thing can be if you're buying with cash. Yeah, there are actual restaurants out here, by me, that are offering discounts if you pay in cash, up to 5%. So now when I want to go have a pitcher of margaritas and get really sloshy, guess what? I pay 5% less because cash is king. Because I bet you that cash goes somewhere and it ain't the U.S. fucking government. I bet you it goes to their families. I bet you it goes to the workers there. I bet you it goes for tips and shit like that. Cash is king, man. For everyone out there that thinks crypto is going to rule the world, go to your local bodega and go buy yourself an ETH with crypto. Not going to happen. Go to Walmart, load your cart up, get there, and be like, here's my XRP, here's my XLM, I want to pay for my groceries. You know what they're going to tell you? Take that cart, shove it your ass, you got cash, check, or card. Come on now, people. Come on now. Ooh, George has got a good comment. Good job, George. George says, cash is king, water is liquid gold. Well done. George had a really good one here. Crypto Ninja says, hi, Klaus. It's been a long day today at work. So glad it's over now. I've missed so much. Crypto Ninja, like, if you took a nap in the last 24 hours in crypto, you missed out a lot. A lot. Waiting for the direct feed from them. Waiting, as you know. That one guy, you know, says, "Hola, brother, how does hump day go?" Ooh, feeling kind of sore from how bad the SEC humped us all yesterday. Well done, another juicy, juicy joke. I like that. I don't mind a little bit of dark humor. I can turk it. Now, waiting for the hearing. We're waiting. We're waiting for their feed, and, you know, it's not really happening. Oh, I hear noise. Oh, no, I don't hear noise. Nope, sorry. I thought I heard... Okay, they got their mics on finally. I don't know if you guys can hear it in the background. They got their mics on, so they should be firing up here soon. I mean, it is like 4 minutes late. I mean, hey, what's being on time? You know, so there you go. Yeah. They're saying ARC 21 ETF was approved. You know what? I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna wait. Because, like, I'm not gonna trust shit. I gotta be honest with you. Dude, I don't even know. Like, come on now. How can you even trust any of these sources? I mean, like, how can you? Let's go on, let's go news now real quick here if you guys want to hang out. You know, let's go to a little news now. Okay. Let's see what we got. Anything latest? If you ever want, use a news aggregator website, they're really, really good. It pulls sources from all over the place, and it does it very, 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 like, updated frequently. Oh, here we go. Uh-oh. Can you hear them in the background? There's people talking. Oh, man. Look at this. They are only 5 minutes behind. Yeah, it does sound like the Three Stooges. Crypto Ninja said, made a few bucks in the 15-minute pump last night. Good for you. Good for you. Make that money, man. Making money is key. So when people out there defending poor price performance, no, make that money. Ooh, you hear him in the background? Is there a little arguing going on in the room? MPPDD says, brace for impact, nothing burger. Totally agree. As I was told everyone earlier, if this hearing is a complete waste of your time, I am not going to bend you over. I'm not going to wind you down, you and 69 with this bullshit. I will ask chat, we'll vote if we should just say get and talk and hang out, or if we should watch it. Because I don't want to waste you on your time. I mean, they're already 5 minutes behind. 6 minutes right now. They're technically 6 minutes behind. That one guy, you know, says the Financial Service Committee is as tech savvy as Gary Gensler, it seems. Yeah, these people are all great, man. Are all great at being on time. I mean, Oh, Trick's got a good one. I had my car serviced yesterday. $475 quoted. $300 in cash. See, dude, Trick, I'm telling you, man, cash makes things go around. There's a stat, Trick, you're gonna like this. There's a stat here in the United States that says for like every dollar you spend, that dollar bounces around the economy anywhere from 5 to 6 times. So like I always like to pay in cash because I know that there's a really good chance that that cash is going to go to someone who's going to go to someone who's going to go to someone. And it's going to help out way more. So rock on for you, man. Rock on. Trick knows what's up. Yeah, seriously, cash is king. And bartering too. I know a lot of people out here barter services. I know a few really good welders that barter services out here. I do know some ranchers that barter services out here too. So just throwing it out there, man. Just throwing it out there. Oh man, this is just. The hearing is like a circus. 5 minutes, another clown. Yeah, dude, it's just. This is a joke, dude. We are now 7 minutes, 30 seconds late. You can hear their mics in the background. They have their main mic on. Here, I don't know, can you guys hear it? No, Dougie Fresh is not on. I wish I was Dougie Fresh. I mean, I could do a little Dougie Fresh. I mean, I could. Oh, I'm jingling, baby. Ooh, you feeling it? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, a little LL Cool J for you. Yeah. See, I can screw around too, because the government's screwing around. I mean, the government's only 8 minutes late. Oh. Robert Melvin says, I barter too. Just makes sense these days. Yeah, bartering is another way to get around El Governmente. And there's nothing wrong with bartering. I mean, like, it's seriously, if the government's not going to use my money dollar for dollar efficiently, well then guess what? They're not going to get dollar for dollar efficiently from me. That's just the truth. Look, if I'm sitting here and if I'm knowing that all my roads are looking perfect, my bridges are looking good, I've got a really good healthcare system, I've got a really good social security system, I've got really good social structures, I've got really good efficient government that gets stuff done, you know what? Tax the living shit out of me. Bend me over and tax me. But now if you're taxing the ever-living crap out of me and I've got crappy roads, government that doesn't get stuff done, if I have a government that just sits there and goes, oh, we don't know what we're going to do with this money, we're more in debt. If I've got a government that can't even like run meetings in time, then you know what? No, you don't get the right to tax me. That's how this works. This is a performance-based world that we live in, and it pisses me off when the government out there can demand more from us, but without giving us the value of what they're demanding. I'll spend money. All right, I will spend money on things that are really interesting, right? I will. Why? Because I'm getting the value for it. Seriously, getting the value for it. But I'm not going to spend good money on junk service. It's just not the deal, and that's what we're getting right now. And like hey, look, okay? You can say what you want, okay? You could say Klaus is mad. You know what? This is 10 minutes past the start. I hear people in the background. I don't know if you can hear. I can hear. I got I got these headphones turned up really loud so I can hear ambient sound. I mean, come on. You can't be on time. You can't even secure a Twitter account. And thank God it was just the SEC that was hacked. Could you imagine if some like emergency service thing was hacked and posted out messages like that? You would have had all sorts of shit break loose. VR Chat Fanatic says, sounds like taxation in Ireland. Should have seen my tax bill for business Airbnb this year. Roads are fuck no joke. My tax bills are astronomical. I would say this. I would say Airbnb. I'd be like, anyone that like I dealt with, I would like send him a message and I'd be like, look, if you want to come back, I'll give you a cash discount next time if you just want to book directly through me. Right? Why give somebody the Airbnb teat who then we have to pay to the government teat and we're not getting shit for it? Come on now. Daryl Vasquez says they're reading all the lines for the show. They're doing like a rough draft, right? Like they're in the background, they're like mocking it all out. All right, you're going to enter from here. All right, you're going to pretend that you're pissed at him. But when he gets pissed, I want you now to defend him too, so it really looks like we're battling this one out. Man, come on, dude. Too damn dangerous, says Klaus. We got Holland listening. Holland in the house. I know we got Ireland, Holland, a little bit of England. A lot of lands in the house, man. Oh, gosh. But we got the heat map. Here it is. Price action. Sol, not at the 100. You know, we're okay with that. BNB, by the way, right around that 300 mark. That's interesting. That was interesting. MPP Didi in Germany, Deutschland. There we go. Got to love that. I got Leia in the background hanging out with us. Still no hearing because, you know, I mean, what's the point of being on time for one of these hearings, right? Maybe, like, Ben Armstrong, like, jumped in the hearing and he's, like, yelling at people in the background. I don't know. This is a joke. Creso says Croatia. Oh. What do we got? Do we got Kazakhstan? Australia? Ooh, I don't know what all the abbreviations are because God's honest truth, there's so many of them that have changed since I learned them in school that, like, there's a couple that I'd be, like, way off on. Yeah, Ben Armstrong is an Uber clown. Ben Armstrong is das Uber Deutsch bag. Can you guys hear them in the background? They're all talking. They're like, oh, this. Whatever, guys. So, yeah, that's the deal. Oh, here's Gary Gensler. Yeah. Yeah, Twitter has... Oh, look who's here. Look at the tweet. Look at the tweet who's showing up on the screen. Can you guys all see that? Can y'all see that? Hold on, here. I'll do it so you can see it. Look whose tweet is showing up on the screen. Gary Gensler says the Twitter account was compromised and an unauthorized tweet was posted. The SEC has not approved the listing or trading. And here is the Rev. The Rev. How did it get past the two-factor ID? That's because they didn't use it. Oh, come on. Denmark in the house. Netherlands in the house. Deutschmarks, yes. 40,000 Deutschmarks. We could do that. You guys want to watch 40,000 Deutschmarks? 40 million Deutschmarks? Do you guys know what I'm talking about for 40 million Deutschmarks? Do you have any idea? Any idea? Anyone know what I'm about to do? 40 million DEU Deutschmarks. Ha! Are you guys ready? Now, am I going to get in trouble for doing this? I think I might get... Okay, look. I'm going to need some chat, some support here, because I'm going to do something naughty, but let's do it. I'll talk a little bit so it's not as loud. You ready? 40 million Deutschmarks? Have you guys ever seen this? 40 million Deutschmark, Bob. 40 million. And did you guys see the phone that he was using? Oh, that's a landline phone. Check it out. Gord. Sorry, I'm a huge Tom Green fan, for those of you that have no idea. Do you guys not know what 40 million Deutschmarks is? Like, seriously, like, I don't, like, come on. Do you guys not know what 40 million Deutschmarks is? Do any of you out here know what this movie is by any chance? And by the way, the reason we're looking at this is because Congress is jerking each other off right now, and it's 15 minutes past then. And Daddy, would you like some sausage? Well done. But let's get back to the 40 million Deutschmark.
When stocks are high, buy them when they're down, very low.
See that? Those are crypto charts, and yeah, there you go. Dude, Tom Green. Dude, how do you guys not know Tom Green? 40 million Deutschmarks. Oh, wait, hold on. Do you guys, who wants to do the LeBaron scene? Does anyone want to do the LeBaron scene? Will I get seriously demonetized? Is this going to get me demonetized if I do this? Do you guys want to do the LeBaron scene? Come on, let's do it. Let's do it. Gord.
Jeez.
So basically, if you don't know what's happening is, yeah, he was going to go on a bus and his dad bought him a LeBaron instead. Are there two? Meanwhile, in case you haven't noticed, they have now shut their microphone off. Yep, they have shut their microphone off, so we're just going to hang out. We're going to watch some Gord here. And so whenever I pick up my son from school, I always say, proud. And my son's always like, proud. I'm like, proud? Proud. Well,
Shut
you
up!
don't know why. This is why. Gord.
This car is more than a gift. It's kind of a...
Here, I'll show. Freddie got fingered. The story told to you by yours truly. The film is called Freddie Got Fingered. Like, that is what is literally... If you have not seen this movie, it is one of the funniest things in the world, man. The funniest things in the world. Oh, man. This is just too funny. This is just too funny, all right? We're still waiting here for Congress to do something. I mean, this is just weird. Like, well, I mean, okay, look. What do you guys want to talk about? And gals want to talk about? Anyone? Anyone? Because Congress is deciding not to be on time. They're like, hey, 2 hours, 20 minutes later, go f*** yourself. I mean, that's seriously what they're selling us right now. So, I mean, like, what do you guys, what do you guys want to dance with? I mean, yeah, Daddy, would you like some sausage? Daddy, would you like some sausages? Daddy, would you like some sausage? Or we could sow some soccer balls in Pakistan. See, you guys love the movie, man. Love the movie. Proud. That's because I'm the #1 son. You guys remember the video game Project Gotham Racing? My license plate was #1 son on my profile. So every time I was doing Project Gotham Racing, where, like, I got the kudos, yeah, I was using the #1 son car. I'm the #1 son. What's funny about that is, hold on, What's funny about that is I have a younger brother, just like in that movie. And it was no secret that I was always the number one son. So it was funny because I always picked that. In fact, my Tarkov profile is number one son. Like, so come on, everyone. Let's be real here. Be real here. Daryl Vasquez is right. Proud. Proud. I'm very proud. What I'm not proud of, though, is that, like, I'm waiting for the government to, like, I don't know, like, start their meeting. I mean, they're only 21 minutes late. I mean, I don't know. Maybe they want view time? I mean, Project Gotham, Xbox Red Ring Days, that's right. No, my brother does not run.
Committee will come
shit.
to order.
Here we go. Hold up.
Without
Let's
objection,
do
the
it.
chair is authorized to declare a recess of the committee at any time. Without objection, all members will have 5 legislative days within which to submit extraneous materials to the chair for inclusion in the record. I want to thank our great witnesses today for being with us, and I now recognize myself to give an opening statement. Today's hearing is entitled Regulatory Whiplash, examining the impact of the FSOC's ever-changing designation framework on innovation. We're holding this hearing after the FSOC finalized its revised guidance for non-bank financial company designations in November. The new guidance is intended to enhance protections for our financial system, but in practice, this revision paves the path for potential abuse and unintended consequences and raises serious questions about whether FSOC is taking the best approach to actually address systemic risk. For example, it removes the requirement for FSOC to conduct cost-benefit analysis when evaluating an entity's potential to pose systemic risk under a Section 113 designation. Even the district court in the case MetLife versus FSOC, which considered the legality of MetLife's prior designation as a systemically important institution, stated that the refusal to consider costs of the designation to MetLife was arbitrary and capricious. The revised guidance flies in the face of the district court's opinion and the Supreme Court precedent underpinning that decision. Not only that, but the new guidance also rejects the approach taken under the prior administration to implement a more appropriate designation process, which includes an activities-first approach and a commitment to work with the primary regulator. I think what's really damaging, too, is the constant whiplash every time that we have a change in the occupant at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Just this morning in the Capital Markets Subcommittee, we dealt with precisely that same issue on the Department of Labor fiduciary rule. I remind all of us that on our 3rd designation framework in 3 administrations now. And though the new guidance states that it aims to establish a durable process, it seems that this pattern of 3 changes in 3 administrations is anything but. In this Congress, our committee has scrutinized the repeated and proactive efforts by certain Biden financial regulators to take aggressive agency actions against disfavored industries through guidance, rulemaking, supervision, and enforcement. And I would argue that FSOC, which is mostly comprised of those same regulators, is taking a similarly mistaken approach with its revised guidance for designations. Let's look at the 2023 annual report. FSOC considering digital assets as a priority. And as recently as October 2022, FSOC recommended that Congress pass legislation to establish a comprehensive framework for stablecoins and that a new federal regulatory authority should be provided over spot markets for digital assets that are not considered securities. Well, look, that's what this committee has been working on since this Congress, the 118th Congress, was initiated. This subcommittee and our full committee have done precisely that. We've crafted a regulatory framework for digital assets, and we've crafted a regulatory regime for stablecoins. We don't need FSOC to be involved in that. What they need to do is support our legislative effort. And I'm proud in both those efforts, both on stablecoins and the regulatory framework, that we had a very strong bipartisan effort working with both Democrats and Republicans to craft that approach. We moved these bills out of committee and we look forward to continuing the work with our colleagues on the Hill and the administration to move that legislation forward. FSOC needs to tread very carefully when entertaining the idea of sidestepping Congress and congressional intent. FSOC designations here, in my view, are not the proper approach a legislative fix is. It's clear some rogue regulators threaten consumer protections in the digital asset market as much as any bad actor. I think we just witnessed the latest in Washington's technological vulnerabilities yesterday and a real low point for the SEC. Chairman McHenry, Subcommittee Chairman Wagner, Hazanga, and myself will be sending a letter to Chair Gensler today to start the process of getting to the bottom of how it happened that the SEC Twitter account was hacked and investors were misled yesterday on the subject of an ETF being approved for digital assets in Bitcoin. With that, I will add, should we insert this record in the letter? Okay, do that later. Let me recognize the ranking member for his opening comments.
Thank you. There we go. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd also like to welcome our witnesses. Thank you for your willingness to support the subcommittee's work. Let us first remember that the Financial Stability Oversight Council, or FSOC, was originally established in 2010 in the aftermath of a global financial crisis that cost the American people and the U.S. economy more than $20 trillion. I served on this committee, when we developed and enacted the landmark Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act. In response to the destabilizing impact of reckless financial practices undertaken by AIG and other interconnected non-bank entities, Congress specifically empowered FSOC with the authority to designate non-bank financial institutions as systemically important, only when warranted. In the interest of mitigating risk to our financial system, designated entities are subject to Federal Reserve regulation and supervision. For the sake of maximum transparency and accountability, Dodd-Frank also contemplated that every non-bank financial company is unique in its own way and in the context of risk evaluation. That is precisely why the law sets forth multiple factors that FSOC must consider in determining whether a particular institution is systemically important. These factors include the extent of leverage and off-balance sheet exposures and the degree to which a company is already subject to regulation. To date, FSOC has only designated 4 non-bank entities as systemically important financial institutions, or SIFIs. Currently, there are none that hold that designation. Following a series of misguided efforts to undermine its designation authority during the Trump administration, the Council recently approved an interpretive guidance and analytical framework that seeks to build upon the systemic risk oversight goals that are set forth in Dodd-Frank. Importantly, FSOC has finalized these proposals and amid the continued prevalence of shadow banking, the escalating migration of core banking activities to non-bank financial companies that fall outside the scope of traditional bank regulation. As recently reported by the Financial Stability Board, the value of total global financial assets held by non-bank financial intermediaries currently stands at over $461.2 trillion, or 47.2% of all global financial assets. Cryptocurrency firms also carry the potential to present significant risks to financial stability. Over the past couple of years, we've witnessed the catastrophic collapse of FTX, the violation of federal anti-money laundering and sanctions laws by Binance, and legal and operational issues facing several other crypto companies, just to name a few. Moreover, the recent failures of Silicon Valley Bank, Signature Bank, and Silvergate Bank have given rise to serious concerns regarding the cascading impact of crypto market volatility on the traditional financial sector. And just last month, FSOC for the first time identified the use of artificial intelligence in financial services as a new vulnerability in our financial system. Clearly, the fundamental statutory mission of the Council is to identify and assemble and assess emerging threats to U.S. financial stability, which has become even more critical. At the same time, our systemic risk policy must continue to embrace the myriad benefits of evolving innovations in the financial services sector. Towards this end, both FSOC and the Biden administration have issued recent recommendations and strategies that underscore the importance of facilitating responsible innovation with appropriate oversight structures in place to minimize risk and safeguard consumer and investors. I look forward to discussing these and other issues with our witnesses. And again, I thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Ranking member yields back. Today we welcome the testimony of Paul Kupiak. Dr. Kupiak is Senior Fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, where he studies systemic risk and the management and regulation of banks and financial markets. Bill Hulsey. Mr. Hulsey is Senior Vice President of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce's Center for Capital Market Competitiveness. Mr. G. Kim. Mr. Kim is the General Counsel and Head of Global Policy at the Crypto Council for Innovation. Jeffrey Dunwoody. Mr. Dunwoody is a partner at Cravath, Swain & Moore, where he advises clients on a broad range of regulatory enforcement matters in traditional finance and financial technology. And Amias Garrity. Mr. Garrity is a partner at QED Investors, a venture capital firm investing in the fintech industry. We thank each of you for being with us today. Each of you will be recognized for 5 minutes to give an oral presentation of your testimony. Without objection, each of your written statements will be made part of our official record. Dr. Kupiak, you are recognized for 5 minutes for your opening comments.
Chairman Hill, Ranking Member Lynch, and distinguished members of the subcommittee, thank you for convening today's hearing and for inviting me to testify. I'm a senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, but this testimony today are my personal views. In theory, the FSOC's activities should enhance financial stability and prevent new government bailouts. In practice, the FSOC has inappropriately designated non-bank financial firms, failed to identify, and importantly, failed to motivate its members to take proactive actions to mitigate the risks associated with factors that subsequently caused financial instability. The FSOC's 2022 annual report highlighted the need for its members to monitor the interlinkages between digital asset and traditional financial firms. It also recommended that banking supervisors, and I quote, continue to ensure that banks maintain adequate capital and liquidity, sound interest rate risk management practices, and well-developed operational resiliency plans. But events a few short months later revealed that bank supervisors had not ensured that banks maintained adequate capital and liquidity, sound interest rate risk management practices, or well-developed resiliency plans. The FSOC and its bank regulatory members failed to identify and guard against the biggest financial stability risk, unrealized interest rate losses from maturity mismatches in the banking system. These risks came home to roost as depositor runs and bank failures required a systemic risk exception and emergency federal guarantees to quell a crisis. I think that the FSOC earns a failing grade on its legislative responsibility to, and I quote, eliminate expectations on the part of shareholders, creditors, and counterparties of financial firms that the government will shield them from losses in the event of failure. Instead of performing as a body that objectively identifies financial stability risks and promotes transparent improvements in financial safety and soundness supervision and regulation, the FSOC's recommendations have been highly politicized. FSOC changes the standards and procedures it uses to guide designations every time the party in the White House changes. The FSOC's 2023 revisions to its definition of financial instability and the elimination of the need for a cost-benefit assessment and an estimate of the likelihood a designee might experience material financial distress have made FSOC Section 113 designations easier. Published guidance says FSOC designations will target the largest, most interconnected non-bank financial firms. Unless an FSOC designation is required to establish that that designee is on the verge of financial instability, an FSOC designation is effectively punishment for the designee's success. A designee gets new, costly supervision by the Federal Reserve Board, a financial regulator that itself is losing $2 billion per week and has a $1.3 trillion unrealized interest rate-related loss on its balance sheet. In order to escape an FSOC designation, non-bank financial firms have to shrink their size and jettison some of the key financial businesses that made them large and prosperous. Democrat-controlled FSOCs have never de-designated a non-bank financial firm. Designation reversals occurred with successful litigation or by FSOC votes taken in 2018 when FSOC was controlled by a different party. Until 2021, no FSOC annual report mentioned climate change at all, let alone as a systemic risk threatening financial stability. Yet quashing climate change systemic risk is the holy grail of this administration's FSOC. As my written testimony explains, the FSOC scheme to impose climate change regulation on banks and other financial institutions is not the result of objective data analysis, but instead is the implementation of a political plan to discourage fossil fuel investments, a plan hatched well before the current administration was even elected. Common sense and a significant body of research suggest that regulatory uncertainty discourages private sector investment. The impact of policy uncertainty is bigger when investments are irreversible, as they are in the crypto industry. There is a need for certainty in crypto-related regulations, but that certainty can only be provided by comprehensive congressional legislation, not FSOC designations. If Congress is not willing to repeal the FSOC Section 113 powers, it should at least alter the way the FSOC votes. Congress could require FSOC reports and designations to be approved by the ranking member of an appropriate congressional committee in both the House and the Senate, where the voting member is from the party not controlling the executive branch. Thank you very much.
Mr. Holsey, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Chairman Hill, Ranking Member Lynch, and members of the subcommittee.
Now, real quick, I don't mean to interrupt this, but we are now talking how many frickin' technical difficulties. This dude is now borrowing this dude's mic. They started 20-something minutes late. This is a perfect example on how to run a shit show. Don't do what these people are doing. Please don't.
Committee, my name is Bill Hulse. I'm the Senior Vice President at the Chamber's Center for Capital Markets Competitiveness. In this role, I oversee the Chamber's work on policy related to financial regulation and the financial sector. Individually, I lead the division's work as it relates to consumer finance and digital assets. Before this, I was an advisor to former Congressman Randy Hultgren, a member of this committee, and I'm honored to return today as a witness for this important hearing. I will begin by emphasizing what it means for a non-bank financial company to be designated as systemically important. This is not an insignificant matter. Designating a non-bank financial company as systemically important stands to fundamentally change the functioning of the entire entity, not just one or two business lines, and transform the company's entire business model. After FSOC designates a company as systemically important, the Federal Reserve Board must institute capital, liquidity, and stress testing requirements and supervise it for compliance. These requirements are designed for large, complex banking organizations, such as globally systemically important banks, but in this case apply to a non-bank financial company. Companies that FSOC may consider designating include digital assets companies, non-bank mortgage servicers, hedge funds, private equity funds, asset managers, and insurance companies, just to name a few. FSOC's recent budget indicates it has doubled its staff in recent years, suggesting that it will be much more active. I want to highlight the Chamber's primary concerns with the November 2023 guidance. First, we are concerned about FSOC deprioritizing an activities-based approach to addressing potential systemic risk. Despite the FSOC's assertion that the activities-based approach remains a part of its toolbox, we remain deeply concerned that the changes to its procedures reflect FSOC's intention to make designation of individual entities its primary approach. Second, the Chamber is concerned that FSOC's updated guidance would not require it to consider whether a company is vulnerable to material financial distress, consistent with a 2016 ruling in the DC Circuit. Third, the Chamber is concerned the updated guidance does not afford due process for companies that may be designated as systemically important. My written testimony includes numerous recommendations that FSOC could adopt or that Congress could require. In addition to FSOC's authority to designate non-bank financial companies as systemically important, it also publishes an annual report. This report can be an important transparency tool for its work and its views about risk to the financial system. Last month, FSOC published its 2023 annual report. The report identifies dozens of market developments and potential risks, but in many cases, it fails to demonstrate a nexus of these risks to the financial stability of the United States. In FSOC's view, almost anything and everything can be deemed risky, which begs the question of whether resources are being prioritized to address actual threats to financial stability, an entirely different standard. A few examples in the report I would like to highlight include discussion on digital assets, complex fintech partnerships, and artificial intelligence. Regarding digital assets, the 2023 report states, quote, financial stability vulnerabilities may arise. I support for its recommendation that, quote, Congress pass legislation to provide for the regulation of stablecoins and the spot market for crypto assets that are not securities. No crypto company that has failed in recent months, including instances of fraud and other breaches of consumer trust, pose risk to the stability of the US financial system. Policymakers should be careful to not conflate, for example, consumer protection and anti-money laundering regulations with systemic risk regulations like capital and liquidity requirements. Finally, I want to underscore the importance of Congress enacting legislation to limit the regulatory whiplash non-bank financial companies must navigate under the new status quo. This regulatory uncertainty makes it extremely difficult to innovate, especially given the looming threat of being designated as systemically important and subject to bank-like regulations. The House Financial Services Committee has a strong record of advancing bipartisan legislation to institute stronger due process at FSOC. One such bipartisan bill, currently pending before the committee, is the FSOC Improvement Act, which would require FSOC to consider alternative approaches before determining a non-bank financial company shall be supervised by the Federal Reserve Board. Thank you again for the opportunity to testify. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Kim. You're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Hill, Ranking Member Lynch, and members of the subcommittee for the opportunity to testify today on how the FSOC's final guidance on non-bank financial company designation process will impact the digital assets industry. I am grateful for the engagement and leadership of the subcommittee. I am pleased to represent the Crypto Council for Innovation, a global alliance of industry leaders across the digital asset space. We believe that constructive partnership between government and business stakeholders is critical to crafting sound policy and regulation that benefits consumers, investors, and industry. The topic of today's hearing is an important one. CCI strongly supports sound, fit-for-purpose regulation that can safeguard consumers and markets, while fostering innovation necessary to maintain U.S. leadership in an evolving global economy. As a threshold matter, CCI recognizes and appreciates that the FSOC has been tasked by Congress to play a critical role in identifying and assessing systemic risks to U.S. financial stability. Given the importance of this mandate, however, FSOC should remain focused only on risks of such magnitude that require FSOC's unique intervention while respecting the constitutionally and congressionally defined roles of state and federal regulators to oversee the vast majority of financial services and broader market activity. Indeed, FSOC was established by Congress to identify and mitigate the most serious of risks that rise to the level of being systemic, which is deliberately a very high bar. We are also supportive of ensuring a transparent and durable process for FSOC in using its non-bank financial company designation authority, which would include appropriate due process and procedural protections for non-bank financial companies reviewed for potential designation. Digital assets and related technologies are already improving how individuals and businesses are able to access and engage in financial transactions. Tokenized assets and new blockchain-based transaction rails can improve financial access and inclusion, reduce counterparty risk, enhance transparency, improve operational efficiencies, and lower costs. The industry is working to improve on the legacy financial system and solve for gaps that have systematically harmed lower income and historically disadvantaged populations. As just one example, stablecoins allow for lower cost and more efficient cross-border transactions, making it easier for individuals to send money through remittance payments to their families abroad. While remittance through a traditional financial institution costs between 5% and 10% of the transaction, the cost to conduct the same transaction through crypto is typically around 1%. For a global remittance market of $600 billion that is expected to reach $1 trillion by 2026, this reduced cost represents critical savings for consumers and their families. Yet, as previously substantiated by the FSOC, the size, scale, and interconnectedness of the digital asset industry is dwarfed by the legacy system it seeks to improve. First, by one recent estimate, the total size of the entire global digital asset market measured approximately $1.7 trillion. For comparison, the market cap for US equity markets is approximately $45 trillion, more than 25 times the total size of the global digital asset market. Additionally, the total market cap of the top 5 US dollar-pegged stablecoins is below $150 billion, a figure that is smaller than many US publicly traded companies. Second, digital asset exchanges and intermediaries are typically non-banks, which mean they lack direct access to critical financial services infrastructure, including Federal Reserve payment systems, instead relying on traditional institutions to serve as gatekeepers to such infrastructure. Third, digital assets lack significant interconnectedness with traditional financial systems, a point underscored by FSOC itself in its 2022 report on digital asset stability risks. Appropriate regulation is necessary to mitigate risks, including potential risk to stability. But as outlined in greater detail in my written testimony, to the extent there are risks posed by digital assets, they are largely contemplated and mitigated by existing state and federal regulation. While I agree that a comprehensive federal regulatory framework is necessary to provide further clarity and consistency for digital assets, it is a job of Congress, this institution, to establish such a framework and address any outstanding gaps. FSOC has urged Congress to pass appropriate legislation that provides federal financial regulators with explicit rulemaking authority over the spot market for crypto assets, and for a comprehensive framework for stablecoin issuers that would address the associated market integrity, investor and consumer protection, and payment risks. Fortunately, this committee has reported out 2 bills that seek to do these very things: the Financial Innovation and Technology for the 21st Century Act and the Clarity for Payment Stablecoins Act, respectively. CCI is very supportive of advancing these pieces of legislation and agrees with the FSOC that it is critical for Congress to provide additional regulatory certainty through thoughtful and forward-leaning legislation. Thank you again, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you very much. Mr. Dinwoody, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Chairman Hill, Ranking Member Lynch, and members of the subcommittee, thank you for inviting me to participate. I would like to note that I am presenting my own views today and not those of my law firm or any client of the firm. My remarks will focus on 3 points. The first point, recognizing the important role and function of FSOC. As we all know, in the United States, we have divided oversight over our economy and markets across many regulatory organizations that have different statutes and missions. So there is tremendous benefit in having a formal mechanism like FSOC that is responsible for bringing together experts to identify, monitor, and spearhead responses to risks across the financial system. FSOC also serves as a catalyst for interagency coordination and cooperation. It creates connective tissue across agencies, which helps mitigate regulatory siloing. Regulatory coordination is important at all times, but is absolutely essential when crises occur. I experienced this firsthand throughout 2020 when I was working at the SEC and the Treasury Department. Point number 2, non-bank SIFI designations. Only time will tell what will be the practical effects of FSOC's recent decision to replace the 2019 guidance and place FSOC's non-bank SIFI designation authority on, quote, equal footing with FSOC's other powers. My hope is that the decision to place the designation authority on equal footing with FSOC's other powers proves to be only a symbolic change, and that non-bank SIFI designation remains, in practice, a tool of last resort. Indeed, it's difficult to understand how the SIFI designation of a company would be the most effective first step to respond to a perceived threat. It's unclear, for example, how designating an asset manager and thereby subjecting it to Federal Reserve supervision and prudential standards would reduce systemic risk. This would be a peculiar approach, given that the Federal Reserve does not appear to have much experience regarding the asset management industry. These questions also apply in the context of many other types of companies. The most effective way to identify and respond to risk to financial stability is an activities-based approach, where FSOC focuses its efforts on industry and economy-wide assessments and works closely with Congress and relevant regulators to respond to any perceived threat. It is heartening that FSOC has noted that its new guidance does not make designation FSOC's default method of addressing risks. FSOC has also stated that it expects to continue to address most risks through its collaboration with primary financial regulators. Let's hope this remains the case. My third point, FSOC's areas of focus going forward. FSOC and its member agencies have finite resources to bring to bear, so it's essential that the Council remain disciplined in its approach. FSOC should resist any attempts to be used to advance policy or regulatory agendas or narratives in support of such agendas that are unrelated to FSOC's mandates. At the same time, FSOC must stay focused on providing a sober assessment of the factors and areas that truly present vulnerabilities, risks, and threats to financial stability. Based on a review of FSOC's recently published annual report, it appears that the Council is not sufficiently focused on the vulnerabilities and risks that arise from the government and state actors. Make no mistake, actions and policies of the government create risks and vulnerabilities and should be examined and monitored. To name just one example, many concerns have been raised regarding potential effects on the financial services sector and broader economy of the large volume of financial regulatory rulemaking initiatives advanced over the past 3 years. Given the number of significant proposals and the questions raised concerning their potential cumulative effects, this is a topic the Council should be actively examining and monitoring. In closing, I thank you again for inviting me to participate today, and I look forward to addressing any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Garrity. You're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Lynch. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today and to support this committee's work. In my written testimony, I covered 3 topics. First, offered some historical perspective on the creation of the Council and why its ability to create accountability directly responds to weaknesses that we saw in the lead up to the global financial crisis. Second, I discussed the importance of the Council's authority to require supervision of complex non-bank financial companies and why the most recent guidance restores balance for an activities-based approach and the Council's narrow entity-based approach focused on designation. Third, in my written testimony, I covered why the Council's work is more important than ever as we round 15 years from the height of the financial crisis. As we begin, however, I want to highlight one story about the nature of the Council's work and to offer some reflections that may assist this committee in its engagement. Most importantly, I want to highlight that we cannot have an innovative financial system if financial risks can build up without oversight and if regulators are unable to coordinate across markets. In the early days of the Council, memories of the crisis were fresh. We were motivated and we had much work to do to create an infrastructure for the Council to fulfill its mandate. For example, in July of 2011, the Council published the first ever financial stability report of the US government. It was a mammoth undertaking, and we had completed it with incredible collaboration from economists and analysts across the member agencies. But I remember a blog post that I read a few weeks later, and the blog post made fun of the Council for putting so much effort into its monitoring. The blog pointed out that financial crises rarely come one after another. And so the summer of 2011 was a time that the Council should have been taking a breather, not doing its important work, confident that the probability of another crisis happening on its watch then was close to 0. But that's not the Council's job. The Council's job is, in fact, to try to analyze low probability, high severity events, and it is their duty to try to prevent those events. Because we have a dynamic financial system, we cannot know in advance the nature of the risks or the innovations that may come in time. Therefore, the strength of the Council is not its few targeted authorities, but rather its unique purview of the financial system. The Council's 2 main approaches complement each other. One focused on activities, which the Council has stated will be how it addresses most risks, as well as its narrow authority to bring non-bank financial companies who could pose a threat to financial stability under enhanced prudential standards. I know that many on this committee believe in a wait-and-see approach to innovation. Wait and to regulate until the risks are clear. Looking through this lens underscores how important designation authority is to support innovation. Imagine a new financial services activity that has an uncertain risk profile. The market participants in this activity could include a large number of small players, mostly unlevered, and let's say one extremely large player with a 25-to-1 leverage ratio on its balance sheet and $1 trillion of exposure. How should regulators address that risk? Certainly, they could consider activities-based approaches. But could this company be considered too big to fail? Would that consideration by other market participants give it an unfair competitive advantage? What is the appropriate response to this risk? Is it appropriate to put regulatory burdens on a large number of small participants when the risks are associated with one giant, highly levered market participant? Doing so would still leave unfair market distortions in place. As I close this testimony, I know that some on this committee have concerns about the Council's interest in a number of new and emerging trends. To take 3 hot-button examples, AI, crypto, and climate. I would argue that the financial stability risks from climate, crypto, and AI are all currently limited. But it is the wisdom of the statutory language to require the Council to focus on potential and emerging risks. This may seem counterintuitive from the language we usually use about systemic risks, because systemic risks sound like they should be everywhere, everything, all at once. But it is precisely the wisdom of the statutory mandate to be forward-looking. And considering risks that haven't yet materialized is the only thing that can give us some hope that the Council may make financial crises less common and less severe. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank all of our witnesses. We'll now turn to member questions, and the chair recognizes himself for 5 minutes for questions. Last June, when CFTC Chairman Benham testified before the House Agriculture Committee, he talked about FSOC's recommendation that Congress enact legislation to fill the regulatory gap over the spot market for Bitcoin and for all digital assets that weren't deemed securities. He expressed support for our market structure legislation, which he said would provide his agency with additional authority to do just that. I couldn't agree more, and that's why, as I noted in my opening statement, many Democrats and Republicans came together in this committee and at the Agriculture Committee to work on legislation to protect consumers, provide regulatory clarity, to improve the broken status quo, and to actually fill that gap that FSOC had noted. Likewise, we've been working on stablecoin legislation, which also was noted by FSOC, and one issue there that I think is important to deal with. So we've taken action in both committees there. Mr. Hulse, would attempting to sidestep Congress be overreach by FSOC from your study of how FSOC's worked over the past decade?
So as a general matter, I'm concerned that the November 2023 guidance gives FSOC more supervisory leeway to sidestep Congress, as you described. It has made it much easier for FSOC to designate a non-bank financial company, such as a digital assets company, payment stablecoin issuer, as systemically important. As it relates to digital assets, FSOC is effectively telling Congress, in my view, if you don't do things our way, we are going to consider designating a non-bank financial company, such as a digital assets company, systemically important. This would not be the carefully tailored approach that is being considered by the Financial Services Committee and the Agriculture Committee. And importantly, it would mean only companies that FSOC has designated as systemically important would be subject to these heightened standards, not the rest of the market.
Yeah.
Therefore, the rest of the market would not receive that clarity that Congress is trying to provide.
So, making that designation is a tool, but it's not a way to take care of, an entire framework type issue. It's really, that's why it's interconnected, that's why it's large, that's why it's activities-based, et cetera. Mr. Kupiak, so did the bank regulators notice the interconnectedness and risks associated with uninsured deposits last year? Or I missed out on any warning before Silicon Valley went down. Were they not alert to something that 175 banks had over 50% of their deposits in an uninsured capacity? Could that have been considered a systemic risk? Would some analyst at the Treasury Department not have noticed that?
The bank regulators clearly really blew that. The interactions with the crypto industry were at Signature Bank and Silvergate Bank, but the actual problems that caused the failure of that and SVB were the interest rate mismatch that those banks had invested.
My point is that that was a major systemic threat, and that some institutions within the depository category of institutions were more at risk than others. Would it bring down the entire financial system? I don't know, but that's the whole point I thought of FSOC, sort of looking out and doing surveillance across the board, and that's one that's right under their nose, that's not remotely new or esoteric or emerging, and it's, you know, that's somewhat troubling, I think, and I think that's why we saw the regulators come to this committee and do a major mea culpa on that topic. Mr. Kim, over the last 2 years, FSOC has made digital assets one of its top priorities. Do you think it makes sense for FSOC to list digital assets as one of its top 4 priorities, given the relative size of the digital asset market compared to the example that was used in testimony, for example, that the equity market cap is $45 trillion compared to $1.7 trillion?
Thank you for your question. While I understand the need to monitor new developments, I believe any analysis of the digital assets industry will reflect that it's not a systemic risk, a fact that FSOC itself has acknowledged. When it comes to mitigating any risks and providing the regulatory clarity, that is, again, the role of Congress, this institution, to provide that clarity through a comprehensive federal framework that addresses market oversight for spot crypto assets as well as for payment stablecoin issuers. Again, a fact that FSOC has recommended and acknowledged itself. So that clarity has to come from Congress, not from FSOC.
Mr. Dinwiddie, I'd like you to take this question maybe offline, just send me a written answer to it. Talking about third-party reviews, that was also noted in FSOC as risks in the fintech arena. I'd like for you to send me your thoughts specifically on third-party risks that FSOC really rises to the level of FSOC's consideration. And with that, I will yield back and ask the ranking member for his questions for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Last month, FSOC released its annual report on emerging threats to U.S. financial stability, and importantly, for the first time, the Council identified the use of artificial intelligence in financial services as an emerging vulnerability in the financial systems. Now, I suppose basic AI has been very, very helpful. I know that a lot of the firms are using it for personalized consumer services and, in some cases, consumer loan underwriting, some risk management auditing at a very basic level. And I think it has actually helped the efficiency and cost reduction of those services. However, the evolving use of AI, especially the deep learning models, present some corresponding risks. For example, FSOC warns that varying AI technologies, again, those deep learning models and systems, present a so-called black box problem, Mr. Garrity. The systems are so complex and opaque that interpretability of the system, in other words, making that nexus between inputs and outputs, is impossible in many cases, or as they put it, astronomically improbable. So when we have people who are, we have asset managers that are using AI right now, and as we've seen recently, we had a major pension fund, the Canadian Teachers Pension Fund, lost $95 million when FX went down. In cases like that, where you have a major loss on the part of a client, especially a pension fund that's trying to protect the long-term interests of those employees, how do we make sure that we protect consumers and investors when if the AI algorithms are actually promoting uniformity or herding behavior, which again is a real threat, or the interpretability to understand what is actually going on with the AI system is not there. Wouldn't it make sense to have FSOC have undiluted power to be able to review activity like that in order to carry out their statutory mandate?
Mr. Lynch, I think this is a really important question, and actually, as you highlight, a really difficult one. The truth is that AI research is not mainly being driven by the financial services industry, and that's a change from 10 or 20 years ago, where financial services was actually much more on the cutting edge of AI, so they would have the more advanced AI models. We're now seeing the AI models become much more advanced and much more powerful outside of the financial services industry, and I think this is a legitimate challenge. At the same time, as you point out, just to take one example that you mentioned, the possibility of AI giving high-quality advice to consumers for low cost, that's actually a tremendously hopeful thing that we could have. I mean, I have a colleague who has a company doing that in Mexico. He brought it to an executive in the Philippines, and they said, well, does your AI speak Tagalog? And all of a sudden, boom, wow, training on Mexico can provide advice to people in the Philippines. This is near magic, but as you say, it's a really important question. I think the one thing I would point out in response to your question is that actually the statutory and legal framework here is pretty consistent with how the financial services thought in the past, which is model validation, so outputting model outputs, not just inputs, and making sure that the managers need to understand what their models do before they're allowed to use them. Even that is put under pressure, but I think that's initially where we have to start.
Right. We won't have enough time for this, but maybe you can respond offline. Many of these asset management firms are actually purchasing. They're not building their own AI. They're purchasing it from an outside party who are not subject to regulation, and that creates a regulatory gap, and I'm struggling with how to deal with that. But thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Mr. Emmer, the whip of the House, Majority Whip of the House, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Hill, and thank you for holding this important hearing today to examine the unchecked, frequently weaponized Financial Stability Oversight Council. This Dodd-Frank era body of unelected financial bureaucrats wields immense power, deciding whether an entity or industry is deemed, quote, systematically risky, and therefore should be subjected to the Fed's iron fist of regulation. However, the Financial Stability Oversight Council has morphed into a political weapon for the administrative state, circumventing congressional oversight and stifling American innovation. While many Financial Stability Oversight Council members are individually accountable to Congress and the public, the Dodd-Frank Act created a troubling loophole. By empowering these same officials to sit on the Financial Stability Oversight Council, it established a body effectively immune to congressional oversight, raising concerns about a potential disconnect between its actions and the will of the American people. These unchecked bureaucrats abuse their positions on the Financial Stability Oversight Council to bypass elected representatives and crush politically unpopular industries and companies. Case in point, digital assets. In 2022, the White House threatened to unleash the Financial Stability Oversight Council on the digital asset industry unless Congress enacted the White House's draconian anti-crypto legislation. This action wasn't about regulation or consumer protection. It was about killing an entire industry the administration doesn't like. Why? Because the Financial Stability Oversight Council operates in a black box, as we heard, shielded from both the American people and their elected representatives in Congress. This is unacceptable. This is why, since my first term in office, I've fought for accountability and transparency. In 2015, I introduced legislation to subject the Financial Stability Oversight Council to the annual appropriations process, ensuring the Council answers to the very body they're supposed to be accountable to, Congress. This bill passed out of the House in the 114th Congress, and this week, I reintroduced the Financial Stability Oversight Reform Act to continue this effort. This legislation will give Congress the ability to conduct oversight over the Financial Stability Oversight Council, and it will force the Council's research arm to consult with the public before wielding its regulatory club. We must instill transparency and accountability. We must protect American innovation from the political whims of unelected bureaucrats. Let's ensure that America remains the land of opportunity. Let's restore accountability, protect American innovation, and finally rein in the weaponized Financial Stability Oversight Council. I urge my colleagues to support this legislation, and Mr. Chair, I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Illinois, Dr. Foster is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to our witnesses and Mr. Hulse, actually, for his kind shout out of my FSOC Improvement Act, a bipartisan bill that we've been trying to move in various forms for several years now. How do I say this? You know, I, as a new member of this committee, I spent one of the most unpleasant evenings of my life reading a report called AIG Is the Risk Systemic, where I got to just understand finally how the risk of a giant non-bank operation had put our entire economy at risk, and just how complex our system and interconnected it was. And so I understand and I appreciate the mission of FSOC to look across the whole economy, to look at things that appear to be safe and are in fact not. You know, AIG was famously referred to, if I remember correctly, by the Republican Federal Reserve Chair Ben Bernanke, referred to AIG as a healthy and well-run insurance company with a hedge fund grafted onto it. And that is not something that can be allowed to happen in a well-regulated economy. And Mr. Dinwiddie, I share your expectation that designating a non-bank firm as systemically important remains but one tool in FSOC's toolbox for fighting systemic risk. Under the revised guidance, FSOC may also take an activities-based approach, direct interagency coordination, and submit recommendations to Congress. As another famous saying came in this room several years ago, that if you have a bazooka and everyone knows you have a bazooka, you might not have to use it. And so I think that giving the FSOC the ability to designate as a last resort is an essential element of the power they have to fix problems short of full designation. You know, while SIFI designation of non-bank firms should always be considered, as should alternatives, when they present systemic or near systemic risk to the economy. And that's the point of my bill, the FSOC Improvement Act. If we need an example of why oversight of non-bank financial firms is essential, we can look at China today. Last Friday, the China-based trust company, Zhongzhou Enterprise Group, filed for bankruptcy with gigantic amounts of debt. And it is, you know, only one of many elements of the collapse of the non-bank structures that have been allowed to grow in China without adequate regulation. And so those are real risks that are going to continue to cause China trouble for at least the rest of this decade. Evergrande is another China-based trust company that's famously been failing. Mr. Garrity, thank you for joining us today. Do you believe the Council is going to, as a result of the new guidance, really take the decision lightly to issue non-bank SIFI designation? Can you describe the other tools that are available to them?
My pleasure, and I think it's a very important point that the designation authority is quite narrow. In fact, if you think about the FSOC's authorities, activities-based approaches are really all of the tools of all of the regulators, and the designation authority is a very small tool. It should only be used to address the risks associated with individual institutions. And I think, as you point out with the Chinese trusts, it is not uncommon in the history of finance for non-bank companies to use financial tools to go create very significant risks in the economy. And it's precisely that type of behavior that the FSOC needs to be on the lookout for.
And so what are the, you know, if you just imagine the staircase as an entity or a sector starts ramping up in risk, You know, how would you envisage FSOC using its authority short of designation?
So I think many of the examples that have been raised as things to be worried about are actually examples of the system working. So for example, I would argue that the FSOC's report on crypto assets and its making recommendations to Congress is a perfect example of how when an issue is probably not a financial stability threat at this stage, it should be monitoring it, making recommendations, seeking to work with Congress. So that would be one example of our first step. Another step is when there is clear authority in one of the member agencies, you can make recommendations. You can look at the money market fund, mutual fund reforms that were suggested by FSOC and ultimately carried out by the SEC. And I think only in very narrow instances, and to the point earlier, Mr. Kupiak said that no companies were de-designated, but in fact, the Obama administration did de-designate GE Capital. So you can see there's a number of steps, both up and down the ladder.
Thank you. I believe my time has expired, and thanks much. Yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Mr. Davidson, the Vice Chairman of the subcommittee, is recognized for 5 minutes.
I thank the Chairman. I thank our witnesses today, and I'm glad that we're focusing in on FSOC. You know, frankly, FSOC, since it was created, is an important role in shaping our markets, and we want to make sure they're used for good and not for other agendas. Mr. Hulse, unlike the 2012 guidance, the 2023 guidance does not include any quantitative bright lines like asset thresholds that should be considered when initially considering SIFI designations. Given that much of the 2023 final guidance reverts back to the 2012 interpretation, why do you think the administration omitted these bright lines?
So I'll say as a general matter, bright lines are helpful to providing the market an understanding of what direction a regulatory body like FSOC might take. However, an asset threshold should not be an indicator of systemic risk in of itself. It should be one of many measurements that FSOC uses to understand whether or not an entity or market is systemically important. I'm not exactly sure why FSOC chose to veer away from using this going forward, but certainly a question that the committee should be focused on.
Well, here's the concern. You know, frankly, FSOC met on a Saturday several months ago, and on a Sunday, they seized the assets of Signature Bank. Now, Signature Bank wasn't insolvent, it wasn't in default, and one of their board members, former chairman of this committee, whose portrait hangs right over there, Barney Frank, said that he believed it was a war on crypto that motivated this. Not a systemic risk of crypto, not even a systemic risk of crypto related to Silicon Valley Bank, let alone the entire market. But it does seem like there's a coordinated effort underway, with FSOC being the kind of common hub for some of these regulators. That it's been termed, you know, maybe inappropriately, maybe appropriately, choke point 2.0, 3.0, 6.0, some iteration of some agenda-driven war on the financial sector. And of course, Operation Choke Point was termed after the Obama administration's targeted attack of essentially its own enemies list. Not necessarily systemic risk, but political enemies mostly. Given Elizabeth Warren's 2024 campaign theme of a war on crypto and her digital assets bill and her, frankly, her influence over the appointees to the people that end up holding these positions that Democrats select for leadership, people suspect there's a lot of truth to this war on crypto. Does anyone else feel like those are part of the motivations? Any concerns about the same things? Anyone?
I think the FSOC's agenda is very politicized, and it is very influenced by those kinds of views. And the banking regulators probably aren't predisposed to want crypto-type transactional functions to grow and prosper because it takes away from the banking industry. And the banking industry that was doing crypto-related activity in Signature Bank was in fact approved by the controller of the currency in their letter. They were using dollar, they created a blockchain, private blockchain system to trade dollar balances between members. So it was actually an approved banking activity. I agree, the agenda is very politicized. And by the way, I think GE Capital was de-designated because they jettisoned all their financial, they sold all their financial businesses and fell below the 85% threshold for non-bank financial firms that the FSOC could designate, if my memory serves me.
Yeah, thank you. Not because of a systemic risk from them, for sure. And you know, good concern for how it's been used in the past. Mr. Kupiak, just one final thing. You know, as a result of not just Signature Bank, but other failures, a lot of it related to this concern over targeting crypto in particular, but some definitely, when you look at Silicon Valley Bank, real problems. The Federal Reserve created this expansion of FDIC, and it seems that there may also be a war on smaller banks, an effort to consolidate banks for the benefit of the biggest banks. Does anyone share that concern?
The Federal Reserve Board has special powers over the largest banks and bank holding companies, and community banks are a different breed entirely. I don't know that there's a war on community banks, but community banks certainly have experienced a large reduction in numbers over the last.
Thank you. I wish I had more time to explore this, and if you have other opinions, please follow up in writing or reach out to our office. My time's expired, and I yield.
Gentleman yields back. Mr. Sherman, California is recognized for 5 minutes.
I have a few comments. It's said that the FSOC is immune to oversight from Congress. I think every one of its members testifies before Congress, gets questions about FSOC. I've seen the crypto folks. They say crypto will shake the world. And now they're here to say, we're just a little feather floating down, and FSOC shouldn't pay any attention to us. Then we're told that it's politics involved in crypto. There is tremendous political power pushing us toward accepting crypto, minimizing the effect of the US dollar as an international medium of exchange, leading to a tremendous decline in the wealth of the average American family that has lower interest rates because of the role that the US dollar plays. And the fact is that we have now pending before the SEC the powers of Wall Street trying to get into crypto. I hope the SEC is able to say no, but to say that the big banks are trying to stop crypto, no, the big banks are trying to make money off of crypto. Not every risk that our economy faces is because a SIFI's involved. Our giant federal deficit is perhaps the biggest threat to our economy. China may be the biggest threat to our economy, but neither the US government nor the Chinese government can be designated a SIFI. There's a tendency to look not at just, I believe the SIFI designation should be limited to where a particular company's decline or demise can just severely hurt our economy. But we saw with Silicon Valley Bank that an entity's demise may not itself imperil our economy, but may be viewed as the domino that causes other similar companies to go down. I think that SIFI should be designated based on their liabilities, not the size of their assets, although there's a real connection in most of the financial world. Lehman Brothers didn't hurt us because they had too many assets. They hurt our economy because they had too many liabilities that they did not fully pay or would not have fully paid had there not been intervention. Mutual funds don't have major liabilities, except if they have a contingent liability if there's fraud or theft from the institution. We do have to look at a company's liabilities and its contingent liabilities, and AIG, which the gentleman from Illinois brought out, is a good example. They had contingent liabilities for insured risks that were properly regulated by the state insurance regulators, and those individual subsidiaries did just fine. Then they had enormous contingent liabilities for credit default swaps, not regulated at all, and that's what could have taken down our entire economy had there not been an intervention. Mr. Woody, what considerations should we take into account as to whether an entity is a SIFI when it comes to asset managers? They don't have liabilities, they don't borrow money, but they certainly advise with regard to huge chunks of capital.
I actually think that the SIFI designation concept doesn't make sense when applied to asset managers, in part because the result of SIFI designation is supervision by the Federal Reserve and prudential standards applied by the Federal Reserve. A, it's not clear if the Federal Reserve knows anything about asset managers, and B, it's unclear whether those requirements would address any perceived risk.
Well, you certainly don't have reserves if you're a mutual fund, for example. On the other hand, I'm certainly concerned with the whole depository issue. I think we have good checks on depository, but if there was ever a question of whether my Vanguard mutual fund actually had the security there, boy, that would shake the economy up. So whether it's SIFI or something else, we've got to make sure that we're ultra careful on the depository issue. And I could go on, except the chairman will cut me off. I yield back.
Indeed, the gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Oklahoma, Mr. Lucas, is recognized for his questions for 5 minutes.
I want to thank the witnesses for agreeing to testify and to the chair for holding this hearing. Mr. Dinwiddie, in 2019, FSOC prioritized an activities-based approach and applied a cost-benefit analysis as a part of the designation process. Could you discuss what led to that change and the difference between the guidance finalized in November?
I think there's two things. First is just the common sense concept of, and I think we all do it at home, when you're making any decision, you weigh the pros and cons and do some analysis. So that's the common sense point. Second point is the court in MetLife, as was mentioned earlier, struck down the designation, pointing out that the decision was arbitrary and capricious because there was no cost-benefit analysis done. So I think you put the two of those together, and that was the thinking.
Again, in your testimony, you indicated that the designation should be used only as a backstop. Could you describe the immediate impact as that designation would have on a firm and explain how the conversations that FSOC would have with the firm prior to the designation?
So the designation process in general will take 1.5 years. So just as a side, there's a question as to if there's really a threat. Does designation actually address the threat as opposed to legislative or regulatory action? And so once there's a designation, the Federal Reserve is tasked with developing prudential standards to apply to that entity. Now, back when GE Capital was designated, that took 2 years. And so if you stop and think about it, we're looking at 3 years before the perceived benefit of designation would apply. Mm-hmm. That's why my view is that the more common sense approach is, let's look across the industry, work as needed with Congress. If there's a gap, this body would address it or the primary regulator.
Mr. Hulls, in your testimony, you touched on how even the federal banking agencies concede that proposals such as Basel III could push activity out of banks and into non-banks, which the banking agencies could then use to justify authority and regulation over non-banks. Could you elaborate on this potential self-perpetuating outcome and how to properly align FSOC's focus?
Thank you for the question. So by driving activity outside of the regulating banking system, which the Basel III capital standards absolutely have the risk of doing, and moving it into the non-bank system, banking system, federal banking regulators, specifically Chairman Gruber made a speech on this last fall, described the solution as imposing bank-like regulations on these non-banks. From the Chamber's perspective, we think a much more constructive approach that would lead to economic growth would be for there to be healthier competition in the banking system that allows them to compete with non-banks.
Mr. Hulse, I was here when we did the Dodd-Frank Act and went through that horrible, hideous conference committee process. Could you outline the deviation between FSOC's new designation guidance with the statutory authority granted under the Dodd-Frank Act? Where does it fall short?
So there are numerous places where the updated guidance deviates from FSOC's statutory authority and is inconsistent with the MetLife decision. Primarily, I'd like to focus my answer here on the MetLife decision, which the last witness pointed out was part of the, I would say, impetus or drive for instituting the 2019 guidance. Primarily, the updated guidance finalized in November fails to emphasize the vulnerability of a company to material financial distress, and instead really simply emphasizes that a company might be significant or large, but that in of itself does not mean a company might be vulnerable to material financial distress or a risk to the financial stability of the United States.
That conference committee that created Dodd-Frank was the most fascinating process, where the housework product was dropped in the trash can at the first meeting, and we took up the Senate document. I learned a lot about the legislative process that day. Yield back, Mr. Chairman.
The gentleman from Oklahoma yields back. The gentleman from Illinois is recognized for his questions.
Thank you all for being here. I'm reminded as I sit here, there was this great line, I think back in 2019, when Ben Bernanke and Hank Paulson issued a statement saying that financial risk tends to migrate around regulatory obstacles like a river flows around rocks. I see a lot of heads nodding. Is there anybody who disagrees with the wisdom of Mr. Bernanke and Mr. Paulson on that? There's a lot of references to 2008 here because, one of the ways that risk could migrate around a rock was to park itself at an insurance company that sat outside of FSOC, and of course we saw where that sits at this point. We thankfully did not have any systemic risk from the failures back in March of Signature and SVB, but I also don't think we should lose sight of the fact that we call them stable coins. They break the buck more often than a money market fund does, right? The algorithmic stable coins broke the bank. It broke the buck. The only reason USDC is trading at $1 today is because their reserves were in uninsured deposits and the FDIC bailed them out. They're smart capitalists, right? They ducked risk. They parked the risk in something that wasn't there, but there is still that real risk. And I think Mr. Lynch had mentioned the recent.
Now, real quick, but I'm sure you just heard Mr. Kasten call out USDC as a big pile of shit. So for those of you out there that wonder why I call it a big pile of shit, he just explained exactly why. They dodged all of this crap, used people, and USDC is a nasty one.
FSOC report, where they emphasize that the financial stability vulnerabilities still exist from the potential of risk runs on stablecoins. And so I guess, Mr. Garrity, I'm curious if this is purely speculative, but the next time a stablecoin breaks the buck, because statistically it's going to happen, if there's a run or some wave of redemptions, where do you think we should be concerned about? Is it in treasuries? Is the barn door closed on uninsured bank deposits? Where's the risk? Or are they too small to matter?
I think you're right to, first of all, I think this is an important question. One of the big challenges with stablecoins is that they look and feel like a bank deposit. And this is, we have a long history of things that look and feel like bank deposits not being regulated like bank deposits. And this is one of the constant struggles for the financial system. As you say, risk Risk flows like a river around a rock, and one thing that people really like is things that look and feel like a bank deposit but aren't bank deposits. That's just a constant of history. So I think you're right to say that the first place we're going to look is towards uninsured deposits, in part because some of the entities like USDC are actually trying to be responsible. So they're trying to keep their assets in the safest possible place and trying to tie them one for one. So I think that's the first place to look, especially in the US market. I think globally, it's basically impossible to tell. And I think this is one of the risks that we in the FSOC and the FSOC members, we here in this room need to be worried about.
Yeah,
but I don't know what the answer is.
No, I think I speak for everyone in this room. We would like to see a robust audited balance sheet for Tether someday. I was going to ask you about sort of a balance between activities-based and entity-based regulation. You did such a good job in your opening statement. I don't think I need to ask, but was there anything you wanted to add on that? Because I appreciated what you said about the need for balance and what lives in there.
Well, I think the one thing I would say is, and Mr. Dinwiddie talked about the timing here. The timing only works if the council can act in a preventative measure. Designation is not something that you could do in a crisis. It would not make a difference in a crisis. Nor would regulation, right? It's the nature of regulation that we always give companies months or even a year to conform with that regulation. So the council's work only makes sense if it is done far enough advance of a concern, and it is just the nature of financial crises. In June of 2008, people were thinking, oh, we're through it. So it's just the nature of financial crises that by the time you can see the crisis coming, it's too late for that preventative measure.
And maybe, and realize I'm short of time, but maybe just make a general observation, and this is for the chairman and everyone on the committee. It strikes me that crypto markets are either systemically risky right now because of all their entanglements, or they're so full of wash trades and illegal activity that they basically don't matter. And I don't think we have enough robust balance sheets to know the answer to that. But we do know that there are significant risks that remain out there. I mean, the state of Florida right now is considering socializing their insurance industry because insurers are pulling out of the state. At what point does that create a risk that actually hits the banking sector? We had the Trump CFTC reported that the more likely you are to be in a flood-prone area, the more likely the banks are to offload your risk onto the taxpayer in Fannie and Freddie. These are not regulated by the bank supervisors. But we have to be watching for those risks, and I think my general observation is we need more, not fewer, rocks in that river right now.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Tennessee, Mr. Rose, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Hill, for holding this hearing, and thank you to our witnesses for taking time to be with us today. Mr. Kim, I believe that my colleagues on both sides of the aisle are proponents of expanding and ensuring access to capital and financial freedoms for all Americans. Digital assets provide investors with financial freedoms that some would not have access to from a traditional banking system. However, opponents scapegoat the digital assets industry and push unneeded regulation in the name of consumer protection. I believe it is important that we use a light touch approach as outlined in Chairman Hill's Financial Innovation and Technology, or FIT for the 21st Century Act, to maintain innovation while providing consumer protection. This legislation would establish robust consumer protections and clear guardrails for market participants. Mr. Kim, would the digital asset space benefit from added consumer protections as outlined in the FIT for the 21st Century Act?
Thank you for your question, Congressman. Yes, it absolutely would. I think what the digital asset industry needs certainty and clarity, which FIT 21 provides. It provides for various ranges of categories for registration purposes, and to your point, it also provides for enhanced, robust consumer and investor protection standards, customer disclosure, segregation of funds, clear prohibition of commingling of funds, making sure that you can't trade on your own exchange, for example. All of this provides certainty to the market, to the investors, to the consumers, as well as allows responsible digital asset innovation to continue to flourish here in the United States, which is important, especially as other jurisdictions outside of the US are developing regulatory frameworks in their respective countries. And what the digital assets industry wants is that clarity and certainty, which will benefit both the market participants as well as investors and consumers themselves.
Thank you, appreciate that. Mr. Kim, it strikes me that there is a stark difference between the size and scale between the digital assets industry and industries that have previously been regulated by the Financial Stability Oversight Council. To put it in context, just 2 of the previously designated non-bank financial companies together had a total of $8 trillion in life insurance exposure. That figure is nearly 5 times the size of the entire global crypto market. Mr. Kim, can you discuss why this incredible difference in size is important to the conversation and what other differences currently exist between digital assets and other non-banks?
Absolutely. As you just pointed out, Congressman, the entire global digital asset market cap is $1.7 trillion compared to your example of $8 trillion with 2 insurance companies. There's a big significant difference in terms of the scale of size between the digital assets industry versus insurance companies that you identified. The other difference is a lack of significant interconnections between the 2 examples here. Insurance, of course, is a key risk mitigant tool, which could pervade the entire economy, the broader financial system, and could create a cascading effect. Digital assets, as I mentioned in my written testimony in more detail, it lacks a significant interconnections with the broader traditional financial service system and infrastructure. So those are 2 things that I would highlight for you.
Thank you. Mr. Dinwoody, as you mentioned in your testimony, in December 2019, FSOC adopted the activities-based approach to monitoring and addressing systemic risk. However, in November of 2023, FSOC revised their approach and shifted to an analytical framework. Can you explain the criticism from the courts that led to the December 2019 activities-based approach?
There was 2 criticisms primarily from the court. The first was that FSOC failed to follow its own procedures in the designation. And then secondly, the failure to conduct a cost benefit as part of the designation process was arbitrary and capricious according to the court.
Can you elaborate on the detail and effort that went into the development of the activities-based approach?
Well, at the beginning of the Trump administration, the president instructed the Treasury Department to develop recommendations for improvement of FSOC's SIFI designation authority. That led to a Treasury Department report with a number of recommendations. Ultimately, that led to the development of the 2019 guidance, the activities-based approach. So it was a few years long of an approach leading up to that. Significant engagement with the public, not to imply that there wasn't engagement with the public in the 2023 guidance. There was a comment period, but there was a longer run-up to it.
Thank you, and I see my time has expired, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Texas, Mr. Green, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I thank the ranking member as well. Mr. Chairman, I am concerned about climate change as an emerging and rising threat. Apparently, FSOC in 2021 identified it as such a possibility in a report on climate-related financial risk. This is important to me because I happen to live in Houston, Texas. We happen to have experienced Hurricane Harvey, over 1 trillion gallons of water, 1 trillion in a 4-day period. There was water all over Harris County. Places that never flooded before flooded. In that time, 68 deaths from the hurricane, 125 billion in damages.
Oh shit, I don't mean to be stopping this fucking gangster from talking. Are you seeing what's happening with BTC? Did you just see that move right there? Hold on, I'm sure this guy's a fucking loser and he doesn't say shit anyways. But as we're watching, did you see that break down to almost 45,000 right there on that candlestick? Holy crap. Wow, is there some negative action here on BTC? Sorry about that. I just wanted to share that with everyone here real quick because we're going to keep this up on the screen. This is a mess.
Caused by Hurricane Harvey across Texas. So you can well imagine that a person who lives along the Gulf Coast, who experiences these acts of God quite regularly would be of some concern. I would like to ask you, those of you who would care to answer, I won't pick on you unless you force me to. What would you say to me in terms of this being an emerging threat? Do you
I would tell you to shut the fuck up.
not perceive it as such as it relates to financial institutions that may be located within this area along the Gulf Coast? And perhaps we'll start with Mr. Is it Garrity? If you would kindly do so, Mr. Garrity, we'll start with you.
Well, first of all, thank you for the question. I do think it's an important issue. And the number one observation that I would have looking at what we see in examples like Hurricane Harvey or the wildfires in California or across the western coast of the United States is that these impacts are very nonlinear, right? To your example about 1 trillion gallons of water, right? These are impacts where the risk has been building for many years, but we're now seeing impacts that far exceed what we were sort of capable of imagining. And I think that is precisely the type of risk that can create a threat to financial stability. When something, you think you understand it, right? This is sort of what happened in 2007 and 2008. We thought we understood what was going on in subprime mortgages. We thought it was self-contained. And then it turned out that it was connected in many more ways than we realized. So I think for now, it's probably right to say that climate change isn't directly going to undermine the US financial system in the near future, but we know that it's changing, and we know that it's changing very significantly, and that's why it's a really important potential emerging threat to monitor.
Well, I think that the term emerging is operative. Emerging. My hope is that we don't wait until it becomes an apparent threat, that it's right before our eyes, because I'm not sure what you do about a threat that is already upon you. Do you have the same advantage that you have if you start to deal with it as it emerges? Your response, Mr. Garrity?
Certainly you don't. I think one of the reasons why it's important for the Financial Stability Oversight Council to think about this, and I'll give a similar example. The FSOC was actually the first financial stability body globally to highlight cybersecurity as a threat. Before that, everyone was thinking about the issues that had come of the crisis. They hadn't thought about cyber. And now people recognize that cyber is absolutely one of the top threats. So I think, to your point, Mr. Green, this is exactly why we need to start identifying these threats for analysis before the risk to our financial system may be readily apparent.
And just to edify, not to contend that this is a part of the nexus of the threat to the greater financial market, but insurance companies sure have realized that it's a threat. We have insurance companies that are bailing out along the Gulf Coast and in California too, but these threats don't occur instantaneously. They emerge, and as such, we have to be prepared to deal with them at some point in the future, and what better time to start than now? To my other friends who are on the panel, I said that I would give you an opportunity to respond. So if you'll kindly do so in writing, I would greatly appreciate it and look forward to reading your commentary. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the time. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The Chairman of the House Administration Committee, the crafter of the new 118th Congress pen that everybody has received today, Mr. Stahl of Wisconsin, recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. The focus of today's hearing is on FSOC, Financial Stability Oversight Council, but we see a general aversion to digital assets innovation across most regulators in Washington right now. The best way to support jobs, innovation, consumer protection is to put in place clear, fair, and transparent rules of the road. It's exactly actually what this committee worked on to do in this past summer by passing bipartisan legislation and establishing frameworks for stablecoins in digital asset markets. If we fail to do this, we'll continue to allow regulators to stifle innovation, and we'll see more businesses migrate overseas. Let me come to you, Mr. Halsey, if I can. In your testimony you explained that the proposed changes to FSOC's designation process could actually contribute to great systemic risk. Can you describe why you think FSOC's 2023 guidance would have that effect, and can you explain why the 2019 framework is a more appropriate process?
Thank you for the question. So if we have more non-bank financial companies that are afraid to innovate, as you point out, due to fear of designation, you will have less competition within our financial system. We need healthy competition between banks and non-banks. As you drive homogeneity within our system by regulating all bank or non-banks as banks, you're going to reduce that, not just innovation, but competition. And as you have more non-banks designated as systemically important and regulated as banks, you're going to drive that homogeneity. And so, this is kind of where we kind of start to see some of these market distortions that the 2023 guidance would enable, and should instead be focused on the 2019
So let me dig into this a little bit. So you have CFPB Director Chopra, who's called the cost-benefit analysis in the context of SIFI designation and unnecessary stricture. Can you explain why it's important, especially in this context, to consider the trade-offs associated with the designation?
Yeah, so absolutely. The cost-benefit analysis and considering the trade-offs between designation and not designating, I think, is important for any sort of policy decision, supervisory, regulatory, or otherwise. There are clearly trade-offs to imposing bank-like regulations.
Thank you. So I'm going to come to you, Mr. Kupiec, if I can. And I want to stay on the topic of trade-offs and weighing the costs and benefits. And so as you know, MetLife prevailed in its case when a U.S. District Court judge for the District of Columbia overturned its designation. In that opinion, the judge stated that FSOC focused exclusively on presumed benefits of its designation and ignored attendant costs. Under this new guidance, is FSOC able to revert to its prior approach, which led to the unreasonable designation?
Yes, until it's challenged in court successfully. The court in the MetLife case cited a Supreme Court ruling that said that a favorable cost-benefit analysis was mandatory before a regulator could apply new regulations. So you need a firm with deep pockets and the willingness to litigate against the government. MetLife was the only one that's been willing to do that so far, and I'm sure for that firm it was costly.
Thanks. I'm going to shift gears and come to you, Mr. Kim, if I can. In my opening comments, I talked a little bit about kind of the international aspect as it relates to digital assets more broadly. Can you comment on how U.S. regulatory approaches are impacting the international competitiveness in digital asset innovation?
Thank you for your question. So I know I sound like a broken record today, but it's about clarity, consistency, and cohesion. And why I mentioned that is because in other jurisdictions, they are developing or about to develop or implement different regulatory frameworks. What we need to do here in the United States is establish that comprehensive federal framework as well.
And how do you analyze the framework that then was passed from this committee this previous summer in a bipartisan manner?
It definitely addresses that, Congressman. Both FIT 21 and the Clarity for Payment Stablecoins Act would address regulatory gaps, further mitigate risks, provide clarity and certainty for our industry, as well as increase and implement robust consumer investment protection standards, and it would increase competition as a result of that.
And would that bring people back on shore, or would it develop more operations here, or a combination of the both?
I think it would be both, Congressman. I think, again, it would provide clarity and certainty for the industry to know that they know these are the rules of the road that they need to comply with to build their operations here, keep innovation here in the United States, and not seek jurisdictions elsewhere as a result.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you all being here. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Mr. Timmons of South Carolina, recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The latest developments regarding the Financial Stability Oversight Council's represents yet another layer of government redundancy in the financial sector. I'm concerned that the FSOC's proposed changes to its designation process for non-bank financial institutions and the Council's hostile posture towards digital asset and financial technology firms will have an overwhelmingly negative impact on innovation in the United States and also reduce the U.S. economy's competitiveness in the global economy going forward. Mr. Kim, is it possible that FSOC's suggestion that it will designate a non-bank financial company, specifically a digital asset firm, for Federal Reserve supervision and prudential standards result in digital asset firms leaving the U.S. for other jurisdictions?
Thank you for the question, Congressman. The FSOC designation process creates what I would describe as an overhang of regulatory uncertainty. Again, it doesn't provide the clarity and certainty for the digital asset firms. In the most recent guidance, it moving away from an activities-based approach to an entity-based approach without providing quantitative metrics and thresholds as to when an entity could be potentially systemic adds to the lack of clarity and certainty for the market.
And this uncertainty would likely cause them to consider going offshore.
Yes, again, it's about certainty and clarity, and this designation process could lead to companies going elsewhere to these other jurisdictions that I mentioned.
Thank you. Mr. Hulse, last April, CFPB Director Chopra spoke in favor of the new guidance, essentially stating that the lack of systemically important designated entities demonstrates FSOC ineffectiveness. Is this the proper way to measure success?
I couldn't disagree with that statement more. I think the appropriate measure of success is FSOC working via an activities-based approach to address systemic risks in the market based on activities, based on products. And in the event they believe that there is risk concentrated at one individual entity, working with that entity to give it the opportunity to de-risk before subjecting it to bank-like capital requirements. This is not the end game. This is kind of the last resort tool that FSOC should be considering.
Thank you for that. In your testimony, you explained that the proposed changes to its designation process could actually contribute to greater systemic risk. Can you describe why you think FSOC's 2023 guidance would have this effect, and can you explain why the 2019 framework is the more appropriate process?
So again, Congressman Style gave me a similar question, is if you have more non-banks that are regulated like banks and subject to a very similar, if not identical, regulatory framework, it'll drive homogeneity within the financial system. We need financial institutions of different structures and strengths in order to drive competition. If all the financial institutions look the same, they'll be subject to very similar risks. And when you have one of these events that we're talking about today that potentially cause the risk of threat of stability to the US financial system, you'll have all of these same companies who are subject to those same risks.
Thank you for that. My friend from Wisconsin often takes my questions, so it's not a surprise. Mr. Dinwiddie, in your testimony, you mentioned that coordination and communication between the FSOC members are critical to the council fulfilling its mission. Can you describe how FSOC may better facilitate coordination and communication between FSOC members?
So just to underscore, I just think that's such an essential point in our multi-agency system. For it to work, there has to be day-to-day coordination amongst regulators, both looking in between seams at regulatory issues, finding gaps, and working closely with Congress. From my experience as the FSOC deputy from the SEC, the coordination was actually quite excellent in terms of bi-weekly meetings, the staff of the SEC working closely with other agency staff on working group issues. So broadly, coordination, cooperation, essential. My experience in the government, it was working pretty well. I obviously don't have visibility into what's going on right now.
Thank you for that. By asserting or even implying its regulatory authority over these developing technologies and categorizing them as likely to become systemically important, FSOC not only risks disrupting market dynamics, but also front-runs the efforts of Congress to craft legislation around these issues. Considering the significant expansion of services offered by non-bank financial institutions, such as fintech companies, and the previous approaches of certain FSOC members towards these entities, there's a potential threat that FSOC could stifle innovation under the pretext of addressing systemic risk. This approach will likely lead to the relocation of emerging industries to foreign markets, which would threaten U.S. national security and supremacy of the U.S. economy overall. The U.S. government needs to carefully craft a regulatory framework to mitigate risk, protect the American people, but most importantly, maintain the U.S. economy's competitiveness in the global economy. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank the gentleman. Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Nebraska, Mr. Flood, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chair, with your permission, I'll waive this opportunity, allow the gentlewoman from Indiana the opportunity to ask her questions, and I will go after her.
Very good. Gentlewoman from Indiana is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Flood. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to Ranking Member Lynch. Thank you to the witnesses for providing testimony, coming here to speak with us today. Digital assets and payment stablecoins have the potential to bring enormous investment, opportunity, and growth to communities across the United States, including in rural communities like mine in southern Indiana. Under the Biden administration, however, we've seen an attack again and again on this new and innovative field. The Financial Stability Oversight Council, or FSOC, was established in the aftermath of the 2008 and 9 recession to determine and address big systemic risks in our financial system. Under this administration, however, FSOC has been used as another tool to push innovation overseas and prevent Americans from engaging in this growing industry. Mr. Hull's FSOC's 2023 annual report emphasizes that the Council remains prepared to act to address risks related to stablecoins in the event comprehensive legislation is not enacted by Congress. This statement suggests that FSOC retains the authority right now to take action. In your view, is this overreach by FSOC, and would this lead to any viable regulatory process?
So FSOC does maintain significant authority right now under the statute and has provided itself more significant leeway to act based on the updates in its November 2023 guidance. What I'd like to emphasize, though, is the action it would take would not necessarily be and would likely be far from the carefully tailored approach that has been considered by this committee and by the House Agriculture Committee. Subjecting digital assets, payment stablecoins, or addressing some of the questions relates to market structure regulation is not necessarily the purview of the Federal Reserve Board, doesn't necessarily retain the expertise to deal with these questions, nor the appropriate regulatory tools. I want to make sure we're not conflating systemic risk regulation with some of the other, I think, very relevant regulatory questions, such as consumer protection and money laundering, that are part of the conversations in the committee today.
Thank you. Mr. Dinwiddie, in FSOC's 2023 annual report, the Council explained that its new guidance and analytic framework would, quote, enable the Council to more nimbly respond to the evolving landscape. Do you agree with this assertion by FSOC?
Well, thank you for asking that. It's an interesting question in terms of, on the one hand, in activities-based approaches, which what I think is the better approach, working with the primary regulator or Congress, enacting legislation or a rule to address a perceived issue. On the other hand, the designation takes a year and a half to make the designation when you go through the process. And then, as we saw in the past, for good reason not to blame the Federal Reserve, it took them 2 years to develop the applicable standards. Again, it was an industry they were learning about, they were put on the spot. So you're looking at 3.5 years on the designation authority to affect the change. As we've seen recently, regulation can be put into place really quickly. It all depends on the regulator and/or Congress.
Thank you. You also note in your testimony that one of your concerns with the non-bank SIFI designation framework is that the Federal Reserve, in many cases, does not have the relevant expertise to supervise any given company. Can you just expand on that concern?
So it's no slight against the Federal Reserve. They have a focus, and you can actually put yourself in their shoes. Oh, great, I'm put on the spot. This company has just been deemed significant. I know nothing about this industry, and now I'm taken away from my day job, monetary policy, the banking system, pretty important things, and I'm putting together on the fly prudential standards to apply to this industry I know nothing about.
Yeah, and thank you. I appreciate that. You know, I've noted before that FSOC spent a great deal of time looking at systemic or climate risk versus systemic risk in the lead up to the bank failures, and felt like they were taking their eye off the ball. I think this is a similar circumstance in terms of what they're trying to engage in. I find it concerning that not only are they overstepping their boundaries when it comes to digital asset regulation, but its component agencies also lack the expertise necessary to do that supervision. As we in Congress continue to work to establish a clear regulatory framework for digital assets and stablecoins here in the United States, we also need this administration and government bureaucrats to stop putting unnecessary hurdles in our way and stop overstepping their authority. It does nothing to provide the clarity that this industry needs and hurts innovators and consumers alike. And with that, thank you for your testimony. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Gentlewoman yields back. The gentleman from Nebraska is now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In FSOC's 2020 annual report, it stated, and I quote, The council recommends that federal and state regulators continue to support responsible innovation by examining the benefits of and potential risks to the financial system posed by new and emerging uses of digital assets and distributed ledger technologies, end quote. Mr. Hulse, this is a noticeably different tone than the 2023 annual report, where FSOC threatens to act itself. In your view, why did FSOC change its approach?
I agree it is a shift in tone. I can't speak for FSOC, and I'm not sure why they would have shifted their approach here, but it's not clear to me what market developments or increases in systemic risk would have motivated that shift in tone. You know, there are certainly gaps related to potentially consumer protection or anti-money laundering that are being worked on by this committee to provide clarity for the regulation of digital assets. But those gaps in those types of regulations in of themselves do not necessarily mean that there's systemic risk. Risk and systemic risk are very different standards.
The FSOC 2023 annual report and previous reports from the executive order highlight potential risks associated with digital assets and related activities. To help mitigate these risks and provide certainty to digital asset entities, the Financial Services Committee, as we've talked about today, has passed digital asset legislation out of committee on a bipartisan basis. Mr. Hulse, in your view, why is the legislation needed from Congress on this issue?
For at least two different reasons. One, as I've mentioned, legislation from Congress will provide a much more clearly crafted approach that is designed to address the specific risks of the digital asset marketplace, much more carefully tailored than any sort of regulation the Federal Reserve Board might come up with. Again, the Federal Reserve Board just isn't necessarily equipped to answer these types of questions, especially as it relates to things like the spot market for digital assets that are not securities. Also important, too, for Congress to act is it'll provide much more stability in terms of understanding the regulatory structure for digital assets. Outside even just digital assets or financial regulation, one thing the business community finds very frustrating is when there is a new administration that the rules of the road change dramatically. And so when Congress acts, especially in a bipartisan manner, to set rules of the road, or at least a framework for the rules of the road that will stand the test of time, that's what drives investment, that's what drives innovation, and that's what will make the U.S. market more competitive.
And I would argue that that's what's made the financial services system in the United States so attractive worldwide, is that we are stable. And this instability, I think, breeds trouble for American innovation. I'd like to just briefly reiterate what I've been saying on this committee repeatedly over the last year. We have a regulatory framework ready to go that would address many of the concerns around the digital assets in the financial ecosystem. We have a plan that strikes the correct balance between investor protection and ensuring we don't stomp or stamp out innovation, and the Biden administration regulators should take that plan seriously. Next, I'd like to switch gears to artificial intelligence. Mr. Dinwoody, you mentioned in your testimony that artificial intelligence was categorized by FSOC as an emerging vulnerability, in part because of, quote, safety and soundness risks like cyber and model risks. However, the report further states that quote, without proper design, testing, and controls, AI can lead to disparate outcomes, which may cause direct consumer harm and or raise consumer compliance risks, end quote. In your view, are potential disparate outcomes and consumer compliant risks associated with AI relevant to FSOC's mandates?
It's an important issue that Congress and regulatory authorities should be thinking about, no doubt. It's unclear to me how that fits within financial stability or FSOC's remit. And so I included it in my testimony. I don't want to make too big of a thing of it. It could have been dicta in the testimony, but I wanted to use an example.
I might stop you there just because I'm running out of time. I'd like to close quickly by addressing something that was raised earlier in this hearing. I believe that AI raises some potential risks for our broader economy that should be discussed. However, I am very hesitant to provide, quote unquote, undiluted power to a regulator in any circumstance. In Congress, we need to make sure we protect some of our own authority when it comes to addressing problems that may emerge in the economy of the future. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back.
Gentleman from Nebraska yields back. I want to thank all of our witnesses. It's been a very informative panel. Great panel. We're grateful for your testimony today. Without objection, all members will have 5 legislative days within which to submit additional written questions for the witnesses to the chair, which will be forwarded to the witness for their response. I ask our witnesses to please respond as promptly as possible. This hearing is adjourned.
Nice job.
Appreciate it.
Holy shit. You are not, I repeat, you are not going to get that back from your life. That is time that is gone. Holy craptastic Sam. All right, I mean, I warned you. I mean, I guess that's the best way to put it. I said, hey, I said, you know, this hearing is going to suck ass. I said that the fun part about the hearing is going to be the chat. I said that what you're going to see is a bunch of fucking losers up there just doing jack shit, which is, you know, what it is. And yeah, I mean, it proved to be exactly what we thought it was. A big pile of horse shit. I mean, it really was bad. Regarding, yeah, every stream there's a fanboy saying something's pumping. Yeah, there's always something pumping. I mean, when you got 20,000 crypto, something's going to be pumping. I mean, I don't really think that this is pumping. I mean, you know, just throwing it out here. I got the 1 hour up on the screen right now. And the nothing burgers are tasting pretty good because the price action isn't moving. Yeah, I mean, that's just how it is. I mean, the hearing was stupid. The hearing was a waste of fucking time. The hearing was cool because I got to hang out with y'all today and, you know, do stuff and, you know, do whatever. But this is just, I don't know, everyone. Just lots of nothing burgers and, you know, everyone's like, oh, man, look at this. This is juicy action. And then you look and you're like, no, it's not really juicy action. I mean, I don't know, guys. I don't know. I mean, whatever, it's cool, you know? I mean, it's going to be like, I don't know, we're going to be talking about Bitcoin halving soon, is what it's going to be, because the market is just not going to really move that much. So we're going to be talking about Bitcoin halving. Whether, I mean, just throwing it out there, whether it's been approved or not, I mean, let's be real here. I mean, you think this is juicy action? I mean, like, you think this is approval juicy action? Like, this sucks. Like, and that's what I mean. Over-promising and under-delivering. A basically supersized nothing burger with no calories whatsoever, and that is freaking it. I mean, yeah, what out? You know? This is just more of the same shit, though, right? I mean, it's all over-promising and under-delivering. And it's like this picture right here, right? Same thing with the BTC ETF, you know? Same thing, all right? The BTC ETF, everyone's like, oh my God, this is going to be the biggest thing in the world. And then we find out that the BTC ETF doesn't really do much of it at all. I mean, yeah, it's true. BG House says, I swear every XRP YouTuber is going to milk it if XRP goes back to 62 cents. Oh, but shit, everyone. The train is leaving the station, though. You know that the train is leaving the station. Didn't you hear about the train leaving the station? I did. Action about. There's no wonder that everyone is saying that the XRP train has left the station. How high will this move go? And will you have time to get back on the train? Or is it gone forever? And I hope you brought some lube because this one's going to hurt. Bitcoin sitting at 45,475, ETH 2444. Are you going to play this ETH pump? Let me know in the comments down below. Sol under 194.44, XRP at 56. Now we're going to talk about XRP leaving the station. With this ETF news, are you going to have a chance to buy in at these levels ever again when the ETF gets approved? Well, guess what? In August 7th, 2021, Santi said, XRP left the train station. That was in 2021. Well, I've got breaking news with you because I have the actual train station event in here we go. When XRP influencers say the train left the station. Ooh, I'll pause it quick. Here's the station right here. Now here's the train. Look, the train is leaving the station. You cannot make this shit up. The train is leaving the station. Now watch what happens. Leaving the station. Okay, I'm getting nervous because the train's, whoa, it's leaving the station. 56 cents leaving the station. Hold up, everyone. Okay, now wait a minute. Wait. What's happening? What's going on? Oh my God, it's going back to the station. Are you serious? Wait. It's leaving the station yet again. Hold on, because that tweet 3 years ago said that XRP train is leaving the station. Okay, I missed out. I'm going to have to get into the next one because I missed out because the train left the station. Oh my God, it's coming back to the station. Whoa. Here's the XRP train picking up more. Oh, yeah, that's right. The XRP train leaving the station. I mean, whether the BTC ETFs were approved or not, but holy shit, the market is telling us that the market don't give a F. The market is like, look, BTC ETF, we don't care. Market's turning greens. What are you talking about? You think this is like the juicy green that everyone's been looking for? This is the 1 hour chart. You think this is green? This is XRP basically sideways in the last hour. I mean, like, there's nothing juicy here. Ooh, look out. XLM up 0.14%, everyone. Choo-choo! Choo-choo! The train is going to leave the station. Oh my God, get on the XRP train. It's going to leave the station. Just wait. When the BTC ETF happens, choo-choo! The train is going to leave the station. Then what happens is, your channels out there, right? All your boom, bullish channels out there are going to go, okay. Bitcoin halving. The train is going to leave the station when Bitcoin halving happens. And then they're going to talk about this. And then we're going to talk about this. And then we're going to talk about this. I mean, come on now. Oh, whatever. Look, here's what I can tell you. Whenever something comes out, and you know what, let's do this. This is how we're going to end the stream, all right? We're going to end the stream with a little bit of talk from me to you, okay? Are you ready for that, guys? Let's do that. Let's do that, okay? Here. We're going to go big screen. We're going to talk from me to you, okay? Now look. Whether the train has left the station or not, whether the BTC ETF was approved, whether trillions are going to flow on the Stellar chain, whether Molt Money does another video where in the thumbnail he does one of these, and then like titles like Boomer, Bullish, Raw Millionaires. All you have to do is one thing. You have to say, you know what? I don't care about the news. I don't care what you losers are saying, because guess what? Here's the price action. So, BTC ETF, that's what it got you. XRP train leaving the station, that's what it got you. XRP gonna move trillions, that's what it got you. XLM sitting there, oh my God, Franklin Templeton, my nuts and my balls. Yeah, it got you 11.6 cents of nuts and balls. Oh, but bro, when the banks flip the switch, yeah, you're right. Banks are like sitting here going, you know what? Nah, no. But bro, come on, bro. XRP, man, $30,000 buyback. And then all of a sudden I say to you, you know what? XRP $30,000 buyback. I'm going to do something a little different. What if I do this? What if I say, hey, everyone out there, I'm going to buy your XRP for $2 a piece. $2 a piece. So if you got XRP, I will buy it to you from $2 a piece. Now, someone out there is going to be like, Klaus, you're fucking stupid. Because why are you buying it at $2 a piece when you could just buy it at 58 cents? Oh my God, the same logic as the buyback. Oh my God. Now, for those of you still watching, I will be fair with you, and I will say I gave you a warning that the hearing was going to suck major balls. I also gave you a warning that there was going to be a bunch of nothing burgers going out. Everyone gets a donut, but only the whole. Yep, that's right. Buyback bullshit. Train leaving the station. Ooh, XRP is mooning on the ETF action. It's got 57.99 cents. Holy fuck, if you had 1 million XRP, you still wouldn't be a fucking millionaire. But oh my god, I bet you, E-Grad Crypto, I bet you some crypto geek news. Ooh, I bet you some more money is gonna tell you that trillions are gonna flow and you're gonna be rich, bitch. Fuck off, man. You know what? I really do like crypto. I really do. What I don't like, though, is all the over-promising and under-delivering, because that creates unrealistic expectations. Okay? Just throwing it out there. And what pisses me off about this is you are the product. See, I won't get much views on my videos if I say XRP to 60 cents. People are going to be like, yo, that's fucking boring. But it'd be the truth, right? Now, if I said XRP to 600, y'all would be, yeah, let's watch that video. Yeah, because people want hope. Like, reality doesn't sell, and the reality is I don't give a shit what you heard about BTC ETFs. I could give a flying fuck about the train leaving the station. I don't give a goddamn rat's ass about BRICS using XRP. I don't give a fat fuck if David Schwartz is the one to flip the switch, because as of right now, as I'm where I'm standing, XRP is at 57.9 cents. Suck my fucking ass, Moon Boys. I'll catch y'all later.
Cause I just wanna hear it out your mouth, yeah. Give me fuel, it's a tool that I use to go ahead and run my fucking mouth, yeah. I take shots, I take loss, I make shots, I miss lots. That's how you get big box, you get yachts, you swing lots and pop off a big shot. I ain't done chasing, got big dreams, bigger things, impatient. Who's at the top think they need replacement? Who's at the top think I'm gonna erase that, face it. I don't give up quick, I don't give up shit, I won't give up this. Cause I know that I want it, know that I'm on it, I'll make it, I promise. You don't wanna fuck with me. A slow burn like a disease. Just tell me that I can and I'll show you things that you couldn't believe. Just tell me that I can. Just tell me that I can. Just tell me that I can. Just tell me that I can.
Later, everyone. Have a good day.